Hey, hi, Elroy. Sorry, I think a lot of people waiting for me. Hey, hi, guys. Sorry for being late. My work overrun with client. Are you guys still there? Hello? Okay, yes. Thanks. Okay, later on we have a guest lecturer. Anyway, we still wait for other students to join. We have a guest lecturer, Dr. James Ong, if you read my announcement in the canvas, right? So he will join us at about 8:30. Right? He's an expert in AI lah. Okay. And I think maybe wait for 5 more minutes for others to join. I think based on last week's request, I have also uploaded the slides. Chapter 3, I think I uploaded last week. Chapter 4, I uploaded a few days ago. Yeah. So hopefully you get a chance to read. And while we're waiting, if you have any questions from the last lecture or you have questions about your TMA, right, let me know also. Because I think some students, I think Kagan, you message right now. I think Paul replied you and gave you the article already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I think I misunderstood your question, so I sent you the TMA instead. Sorry for that. Yeah. I think Paul sent you the article itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I have access to it.
Thanks. Yeah. Any questions you guys have from the last two lectures, or while we're waiting, anything you want to ask about the TMA? The first one should be pretty straightforward, right? We have covered, sorry, let me admit the rest in the waiting room. We have covered things like why you have AI winter, and then what are the reasons that now AI become more popular again, right? Like computing power, storage power, cloud, more algorithm, and all those things, yeah. And then I think the TMA asks you to say what are the things that we can leverage that on, yeah. Okay. No question? Good. I hope all of you had your dinner. Okay. Let me think, people. Okay, so reminder again, the TMA one you're supposed to submit by if I'm not wrong, is the 4th of September. Yeah, next Wednesday. So remember to submit, right? It carries 20% of your mark. Yeah. So explain the importance of understanding the history and past challenges, right? That one should be quite straightforward. Show some common characteristics of AI winter, also very straightforward. I think the first two, you can kind of get it from from the slides that I've uploaded after class last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. Yeah. The last part is more testing your thinking, right? Appraise how we can, through understanding of the history and past challenges of AI, better navigate the complexity of AI development, right? Responsibly. So last part may need your reading of the article, plus I'll say more of your creative suggestions, right? What do you think can help to propel AI? Yeah. Okay. We have 19. Okay, so let's start because we have a guest lecturer joining us at about 8:30. So let's start. Okay, so today we go into session 2, and session 2, let me see, I need to ensure it's recorded. Where's the recording button? Oh, there's some more people in the meeting room. Sorry, give me a minute. I admit them. This construction is crazy. Okay. Sorry for the construction noise. I hope it doesn't affect too much. Okay, so let's get started. No more people in the waiting room. Okay. So I think you already have a copy of the chapter 3 and 4. Okay, but let me just go through with you. Okay. So as I mentioned, so okay, to share some. Okay, so today in chapter 3 and 4 or unit 2, right, we'll cover the role of government in AI. First, we'll look at some different political systems. Then we will look at the role of government as a regulator. Then the next session 2 weeks later is as a promoter and others, right? So there can be many roles a government can play in the current AI field itself. Yeah. So let's look at a different political system, which you probably should know better than I do, especially some of you are political science students. Yeah. So if we were to largely classify the different political systems in the world, right? So definitely one is democracy, which I think most of us understand and know, right? And some representative countries will include the US and India, right? So of course, democracy is through voting, right? Even different laws, legislation, you need to pass by voting as well, right? And usually it has elective representative, right? But of course, later on, we will see democracy when it comes to AI has its own pros and cons, right? Especially if everything and AI is something that people may not be 100% be comfortable with, right? Last week, or rather last session, 2 weeks ago, we actually talked about there's a lot of concerns about AI, right? The ethical issue, the deepfake, and then things like the bias, right? So when it comes to democracy, where these concerns are brought up, you need to make sure everyone is happy, right, to some extent, before you can pass a law that's regarding AI. Yeah. So in that perspective, there can be some challenges when it comes to democracy political system. Yeah. The second political system is monarchy, right? So again, you may be quite familiar with it, right? Saudi Arabia, right, is more absolute one, right? You have a king. Then United Kingdom, you have a queen, right? Now a king, right? But it's more constitutional. So it probably is not really a real power that is there, right? So similar to Malaysia, right? Is some form of monarchy as well, right? So there's a king, queen, or emperor at the head of state, right? The power differs according to whether they are absolute monarchy or they are constitutional. Yeah. So this is another political system. And again, different from democracy, it can have some pros and cons towards the adoption of AI. The third one is a republic, right? So I'm sure you hear many, now we don't use it very much, right? So People Republic of China, right? Then there's different republic, including many countries in Europe, right? They are similar to democracy, right? But they place the power with people for voting, especially on laws and legislation, right? But they are usually also through elected representative. Yeah. Then there is a authoritarianism, right? Again, this is probably also quite familiar with you. You may disagree, right? Later on, we can discuss, right? Power is usually concentrated, right, with a single leader or a small group of people, right? Like the Communist Party of China, right? And then sometimes they will decide for you, for the general public, okay? And there's less individual freedoms and controlling of information, right? So you can think from a AI adoption perspective, why we always say, sorry, let me admit your classmate, why we always say that there's a talk, right? China, right? Because of the political system that is in, so the use of data is more controlled at the government's hand, and then it actually fast track and drive the AI adoption much faster than many of the European countries. I'm sure you hear a lot about that, right? Good or bad, we can discuss, but that is actually the case. Because of the political system is in, a lot of things can be decided to some extent unilaterally or voted within a small group of people by representing a big population like in China case. Yeah. Totalitarianism, right? This is more extreme government where, again, similarly, a single leader or party have the absolute control, right? Suppressing freedoms through propaganda, surveillance, or suppression, right? And one of the representative country, you probably will know or can guess, is North Korea, right? Then you have the last representative political system, right? Theocracy, right? That one is more religious state, right? Religious leaders ruling it, right? There will be a lot of religious law and rule dictating how certain things, including AI adoption, is going to happen, right? So sample countries, Iran and Vatican, right? Both are two different types of religion. Okay. And of course, it's not so clear cut, right? Even if we say, example, United Kingdom is monarchy, but a lot of people also think it may be democratic, right? So there's a hybrid regimes where even though they may classify it, like today, if you go on Google or even you go to the country website, the government official website, they may say they are part of a democratic political system. They may say they are part of a republic, but we also know there's a lot of hybrid regimes that's happening between them as well. Yeah. So maybe a question, and just feel free to type in if you want to speak up, is that where is Singapore? What is our political system? Anyone wants to try? What is Singapore political system? Republic, because it's called Republic of Singapore, right? Thanks, Rajiv. Anyone else want to try? What to you is Singapore? Okay, that one I cannot comment too much. Flawed democracy. Okay. Nobody says Singapore is authoritarianism. Strange, huh? Yeah, the competitive. Oh, that's a good one. Competitive authoritarianism. Yeah. I mean, there are different things, right? We call it Republic of Singapore, right? So shouldn't it be Republic? But when we do the national pledge, right? What I cannot do the national pledge. What? As a democratic society based on justice and equality, right? So shouldn't us be democratic? Okay. So I think, well, I mean, definitely Singapore is hybrid, right? We are democratic society, right? Society may not be a country. So a lot of things we vote through laws, right? Uh, are we monarchy? We also have a president, right? Aren't we monarchy also? Yeah, right. So actually we have some form of monarchy, right? We have a president. It's like UK, right? Okay, the queen may or the king now may have more power than our president here, but we also have a figurehead, right? Like a president. Yeah. And of course we may be republic, we have a parliament, right? If you ask me, and I think some of you agree with me, we are some form of authoritarian, depends on how you look at it, right? So I would say we are a combination. But if you go on the public domain, what is Singapore, right? So Singapore is actually a republic country. Yeah. Okay. So that, I mean, that's the official definition. We are a republic country, right? Okay. So let's go next. Let me share my slides again. Okay, now comes to some Mentimeter voting. Okay, someone want to type something? Let's see. Colonial laws that we brought over, which is somehow similar to Malaysia. They have an actual king. That's why I say we are some form of monarchy, right? But you're right. The president in Singapore is very different from a king or queen in UK. Yeah, so that's why officially we are republic. Okay, we are Republic of Singapore. You go to any public official sources, you go to our government website, we are a republic. Okay, but we do see, due to many reasons, we are like democratic something. We are like authoritarianism, right? I think if you go and Google, I'm sure there are even a lot of extremist view saying that we are actually dictatorship, okay, which I am not going to discuss here, okay. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Do some QR code scanning. Okay, so maybe you can scan this QR code, or you can type this code in menti.com, or you can click on this link, which I'll paste it now on the chat itself. Yeah. Okay. So let me just make sure my Mentimeter is showing up. Do you see the thing? What are the impacts of AI to political system? It's a word cloud. So you can type any impact, right? Does it help to drive or does it do anything to the political systems? Let me also scan the QR code to make sure that you guys see the right thing. Okay, what are the impacts? No response. You can type any word. Let me type the first one, right? Okay, engagement with public. Okay, automation, misinformation, fake news, analyze policies, personalized propaganda. Good. Anything else? Let me just share the screen of what we have now. Okay, this is the Mentimeter word cloud. Okay, so smooth engagement with public, civic engagement. It can collect data and database collection, engagement, public efficiency and automation, generate policy space, data-driven policies, smooth, deep fake, data targeting, database collection. Anything else? We have 14 respondents and we have how many people in the class now? We have 20 over. So anyone else haven't typed? Just try. I mean, from your point of view, what are the impacts of AI to political landscape? Okay, 28 responses. Okay, good. Yeah, so some of this are quite correct. I think everyone is correct, but of course there are some that's more related to what we're going to look at, right? So misinformation, right? Influence, right? Data-driven policy, collect data. So some of these are similar, right? Civic engagement, engagement with public, I will classify them as the same as well, right? Yeah, then there's a lot of data, right? Data related, so that's for sure. Okay, so let's go to our slides. Change the next Mentimeter slide. Okay, so let's go back to our slides. Changing. Okay, so I think many of you got some of the answer. Probably you have already read the slides before today's class, right? So definitely the 4 key areas of AI impact to political landscape, okay? Last week, if you remember, we said AI has a lot of impact. It can help in efficiency, automation, public engagement, and many things, right? So last week we already discussed and I show you what the digital office of Smart Nation Office, right? The pie chart that I show you as well, right? So if I look at it, there are 4 areas that is very hot topic when we talk about impact of AI to political landscape. Okay, first one is I would say 1 and 2 are interrelated, right? So election campaign and election interference, and we know US election coming out and Singapore election coming out also. So there's a lot of use of AI if you do not already notice about election. Okay, so first area is election campaign strategies, right? So you can actually do your segmentation, right? So you know what are the different, let's say, I mean, Singapore is small, right? But if you look at US, right, you have so many different states and different states, or even Taiwan, right? You have different states and different provinces. Some of them prefer certain political systems over the other, right? Or political party over the other. So you can actually do a micro-targeting of the voters, right? And of course, for those of you who understand Mandarin or Chinese, In Taiwan, before the president election, they always like to do what they call 民调, right? The voice of the people, or in general, you call it a sentiment analyst, right? So based on that, no matter how accurate it is, you can collect the data, you can tune your election strategy according to the data collected. And of course, with AI, which we'll see in a while, right, you can even impact or swing that sentiment to your favor, right? So the sentiment analysis, and I would say influence, is one of the impact of AI to the political landscape. Right, of course, fake news detection. So just now, many of you talk about fake news, right? So that's definitely something that is being impacted by AI for good or for bad as well. Yeah. The election interference, right? So there's a lot of AI generated media, right? Whether spreading misinformation or manipulate public opinion, right? Later on, we'll see there's plenty currently in the US election. Okay. Yeah, of course, governance, right? So just now, some of you also say data-driven policies making or data-driven decision making. So definitely many governments today are using data to get inputs for their decision making and policy making. Yeah, so that's definitely one part. And how AI really contribute to it, depending on the data, because you can have a lot of structured and unstructured data, right? And then with that, you can decide how do you want to use it and how much AI can help you to analyze the data before it goes to a human intervention. Okay. And of course, you can use AI, like we say already, right, for public service improvement, example, and automation, right? And of course, just now someone also talked about security and surveillance. That's another key thing. And I think I always share the case about my experience in Shenzhen. Okay. So when I was in Shenzhen in China many years ago, sorry of the noise, there's definitely, I would say maybe 15 years ago, when I was in Shenzhen a lot working there, there's a lot of concerns about pickpocket, right? And dangerous driving. But today, if you go to Shenzhen, if you go up a taxi, the taxi driver will straight away tell you, please put on your safety belt. Okay. And you probably, I wouldn't say no, but probably much less, right? Pickpocket in Shenzhen anymore. Why? Because you have a surveillance camera all over the place, right? So everyone is forced to abide to the law. Yeah. And of course, I think we talk about civic engagement, right? Or citizen engagement, or whatever we call it, right? So definitely AI helps in the improvement of the engagement with the citizen or the public, right? So of course, this helps to drive and also reinforce the existing belief, right? And maybe, right? People always say, I don't read Singapore newspaper because it's always a single viewpoint, right? So that may be influenced by government and using AI as well. Okay. So in a nutshell, while AI offers potential benefits, which we all know, right? A lot of good things we talk about it. We talk about a lot of use cases as well, but there are also challenges that we need to address and overcome. Okay. So because of that, the use of AI, especially when it comes to ethical use and reducing the bias, right? It is important that we need to pass some form of law and regulations for that, right? But where are we at that stage? We'll talk about it in a while. Okay. So let's look at some.
Hey, Commitment 2024.
Sorry, I need to share sound. 1 minute. Okay. Let me know if you can't hear the sound, okay?
In Commitment 2024, the big new name you'll be hearing throughout next year's elections is not a candidate.
Its name is artificial intelligence. And right now, West 2 News political reporter Greg Fox shows us how it's working its way into political campaigns and why experts warn of AI's dangerous power to distort what we see and hear.
Former President Donald Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis famously blast the media.
It's all fake news.
That's a false narrative.
These are fake.
But their campaigns are the ones delivering fake political ads with the use of emerging generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI.
I'm not firing him. I think he's a wonderful guy.
This ad, produced by the pro-DeSantis group DeSantis War Room, shows 3 fake AI gen images of Trump hugging Dr. Anthony Fauci, first identified as false by AFP Fact Check.
Welcome to our Ron DeSantis Twitter space.
Hello? Is my microphone working correctly?
This ad was posted on Trump's social media platform, mocking DeSantis' Twitter announcement and inserting phony Gen AI voices over images of the governor, Adolf Hitler, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and someone playing the role of the devil. From fake images of Trump being arrested to President Joe Biden appearing to announce a military draft.
That the recommended way forward will be to invoke the Selective Service Act.
Artificial intelligence, with its voice manipulation and face-altering abilities through new software applications, is posing a new challenge for voters.
The genie is out of the bottle, and so there's no putting the genie back. AI is here to stay.
Dr. Ishwar Puri is with USC's new Center for Artificial Intelligence in Society, which aims to examine the practical use of AI and the ethics that shape it. Dr. Puri fears voters will be bombarded with TV and social media ads filled with Gen AI distortions that are quick and easy to make.
It's gone out of the hands of geeks and nerds and eggheads who have to sit around and do coding. And it's actually become an app like Instagram or Twitter. You can do that for good. You can do that for misinformation. You can do it for disinformation. You can do it for nefarious purposes.
Major universities around the country, including UNF here in Jacksonville, are studying Gen AI and its potential applications in political campaigns to separate fact from fiction. Greg Fox, West UT News.
Some critics of the way Gen AI is being used to distort political messaging have suggested Congress pass a law to demand disclaimers on commercials, social media posts, and other political messages that are created with artificial intelligence.
Okay, so you can see that is one of the example, right? That's used in today's or rather this year's US president election, right? So many of that. And I'm sure that you are not surprised by it, because not at the election level, but I don't know how many of you get calls nowadays, which I do, and my friends do, right? Faking that they are me, right? So my friends receive call to say, hey, I got a call from you, right? They message me. I say, no, I never call you, but they say they are you. And the voice sounds just like you. So one of the things that if you do not already know or feel is that if you manage to get a strange call one day, right, and the other side don't talk too much about things or waiting for you to talk, actually they are recording your voice, right, so that it can actually generate an AI voice of you, and then it can use to do spamming and fraud from there, if you do not already know. And it actually happened to me, okay? And I'm sure today, if you go to YouTube, there's a lot of AI imitation of the singer voice, right? It's plenty, and many of them are quite alike. So that is already happening, not just at the election level, okay? So this one is what you have seen, right? Just now was some video, but this one, some of the public news, right? So Trump supporter target black voters, right, with fake AI images. We all know Trump is a little bit whitish in terms of his thinking, no matter how much he try not to show it, right? But so this kind of thing is really to help him to gain the votes that he needs as well, yeah? Then, of course, there's a lot of fake images of Trump, and just now we already seen it in the video as well. Yeah. So, and in fact, to be honest, before it was declared as fake, even I myself read some of this, I thought it is real. Yeah. Okay. And of course, coming closer to home in Asia, right? So government in Singapore, right? We all know, I hope we all know about this thing called POFMA, right, which is about, you know, many of the, to some extent, opposition leaders, right, when they say something not so correct on their Facebook or any social media, right, the government or the MDA or somebody will give them a POFMA, right? So that happens quite a lot if you do not already hear about that, right? So, of course, government in Singapore is really studying now whether POFMA alone is good enough, right? POFMA's, again, if you don't know, is Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act. Okay, that's what POFMA stands for, right? So they are looking at whether we need to have more than just POFMA, right, to tackle deepfakes and online fake news, right? Today, of course, there's a lot of use of data-driven mechanism, including AI, to detect that already, right, as we discussed. But do we need, if this number gets beyond control, do we even need to use AI as a first level of defense against it? It can be blocking things, it can be sieving out things and automated warnings. So there can be different ways of looking at things. Yeah. So, of course, if we go back to the election campaign, right, key takeaways is that AI will enhance voter targeting, right, like we say, the micro targeting of the voters, right, and of course, sentiment analysis, right, so it can help in the persuasion in political campaigns and the possibility of manipulation. I think many of you use the word propaganda, right, which also is possible. Okay. But of course, there's also a good thing, right? It can show some form of transparency, right? And then it may create digital divide, right? Where the more digital literate people are subjected to the good and the bad of it. Whereas if I'm less digital, and then I may be immune to that. Yeah. Then, of course, the sophistication of AI-powered propaganda makes it increasingly difficult, right, to split the truth from fiction, right? And then it may give misinformation and wrong decision making, as some of you have pointed out in the word cloud as well. Okay. If you look at Indonesia, if you didn't see this already, right, during the election few months back, right? So if you do not know this gentleman, he was the ex-president of Indonesia, Suharto, right? Already passed away, right? But there are Suharto camps, right, that or supporters that he is even revived, right, make alive to help to do election campaigns. Yeah, so these are the things that manipulated the campaigns and the people feeling as well. Okay. And of course, economists have news, and we saw in the video just now also, right? So there is many AI use information or AI use approach, right, to help to swing the voters' voting as well. Okay. Now let's look at the next video. Okay.
Artificial intelligence can cause real harm. We've seen overseas how AI has led to unfairness. Algorithms that give women lower credit ratings. Facial recognition tech that discriminates against people with darker skin. And even decides how likely you are to be a future criminal. We've also seen examples closer to home. Artificial intelligence is being used right now to make important decisions that affect Australians. Companies, government agencies, and even law enforcement have enthusiastically adopted this new tech. If that surprises you, you're not alone. Almost half of Australians don't even know this is happening. Australians have always embraced new technology, but AI should give us what we want and need, not what we fear. AI should always be accountable and fair. When the government uses AI to make a decision about you, you should be able to understand the decision and to challenge it if you want. Our Human Rights and Technology report proposes important changes to ensure our human rights are always at the centre of how AI is designed, developed and used. To find out more, visit tech.humanrights.gov.au.
Right. So this is something that we also briefly discussed last week, right? Especially on the AI bias, right? So again, no offense to anybody here, right? You can see from US, now from Australia, there is a general bias. Sorry, you want to say something? Okay, I think you forgot to mute. Okay, no worries. Yeah, so I mean, I was saying that just like what we discussed last week, and from this Australian video and previously the US case, right? There's the general bias to say people who are more black than white are more likely to a criminal, right? So there's one kind of bias which we are all familiar with, right? And of course, I attended a few AI conference in the past, and there are many cases also, right? To say if you are Asian, you normally will sit around a round table, which is like China, right? But not necessarily in Singapore, right? So there's that kind of preconception about how a certain gender, race, religion, or ethnicity looks like or behave like. So these will improve, of course, along the way with tweaking of the AI algorithm, with more data and all those things. Yeah. But generally, there's this AI bias there. And if we don't do it right, it will impact and skew the policy making itself. Yeah. Okay. The other one is civic engagement with generative AI. So I think many of you talk about civic engagement, talk about citizen engagement, right? And I think many of us are very familiar using some of the government chatbot as well, right? This is another example, and it's more advanced even with generative AI. And I think last week, I briefly explained the difference between a normal AI, versus generative AI, right? And that ties back to, if you remember, generative AI is part of deep learning, and deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and machine learning is part of the entire data science space, right? So this is definitely a lot of learning itself. Yeah. Yep. So I think this is quite impressive, at least to me. I don't know about you, because I use quite a lot of all this chatbot in the Singapore government context as well, but I don't feel that they are so interactive or intuitive, right? It still frustrate me sometimes that they cannot solve my problem, and then it takes a long time to divert to a human intervention. So, but of course, many of the chatbot today are not at the Gen AI level yet, right? So it is more a question and answer expert systems kind of design, which we discussed before, right? So it has limited intelligence in that sense, right? that can tackle the complex one. But with Gen AI, which as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I'm actually doing a Gen AI POC, proof of concept, with the elder care in Singapore, right, where we are going to first do translation to different dialects to bring to the elders. And then from their feedback, we'll be able to generate some kind of Gen AI interactions. Yeah. So definitely there will be improvement, but for Singapore Public Service, I don't see something like this yet. Okay. Unless you have a different view. Or anyone wants to share? Do you have a different view? Do you feel that we have something similar already to what you have just seen in that Google case study? Anyone want to say anything, or you can just type as well, no problem. No one wants to share? Okay, later on our guest speaker will be asking a lot of questions, so you can share. I think he will request you guys to turn on your camera as well, yeah, because that's the way that he's familiar with. Okay, so let's continue our lectures. Okay, so in terms of coming back closer to home again, right? So there are actually quite a lot of AI that's being used in the Singapore Public Service already, right? Although I said I feel that it may not be as interactive because it hasn't really used Gen AI to a large extent, but there are already many AI-related implementation in the public service. So on the left-hand side, right, is NParks solution developed by GovTech, right? So you already have a lot of CCTV cameras, right, at the open parks, at car parks, at construction areas and other things, right? Then it will go through a CCTV video streaming, right? And then there will be video analytics, right, that government is doing, right? And then from there, they can actually enforce safe distancing and others, right? And then you may have human intervention like a parks officer when that's needed, right? But again, all this analysis and AI triggered actions, right, is already in place today as well. Okay. Then, of course, the most familiar one we always talk about is chatbot, right? So there's this one service chatbot. If you have not already used it, go and try it out, right? So it will have, you can take your text interaction, it can take your location, it can take your images, right? And then this one will actually answer some of the questions. They will classify your case first, what you're trying to do, and then it will route to the respective national agency. It can be CPF, it can be HDB, it can be town councils, and many others, right? But as I said, if you don't believe me, you can go and try it out. It is not as interactive as the one that we have just seen from the Google case study just now. Yeah, but it's good to have it already, right? But of course, this one service chatbot need to have more intelligence. Yeah. Of course, LTA, not surprisingly, and one of my friend is actually doing a next level of AI for LTA as well. But currently, what is in the public, right? There's already this thing called Fusion Analytics, right, for the public transport event response. So it can, based on the different IoT sensors, right, to actually feedback information or data. And then from there, you analyze, right, whether we want to be able to divert, let's say when your train breakdowns, right, you need to get ready all your buses and your other things to replace the train, right, which always happened in the past few months, maybe, right? So these are part of the analytics, and subsequently now there's a lot of AI implementation, right? And some of my friends are doing that as well, especially like a heat map that is trying to capture all these things to help in the decision making, and hopefully in long term, if there's a need in the policy making. Okay, so this is already happening. Okay, next slide. So my personal experience, which you don't see in the deck I uploaded because some are confidential information, but just to share again closer to home, as I mentioned, I was 15 years outside Singapore before COVID, right, working in different countries, right, during COVID come back, right, for many reasons, which we all know, right? So during we call it the circuit breaker, right, in April 2020, right? I remember I received a call from my boss, right, on a Good Friday morning in 2020. It's a long weekend, right? Good Friday, right? And I was volunteered and to lead a team, first to assemble a team, then to lead a team when I was in NCS, right? We call it the Courage Squad because it may seem nothing to you now in 2024. Imagine 2020 when it was a lockdown period, when you ever in your life, first time you hear this term called circuit breaker or lockdown, right? But we volunteer ourselves at the community care facility in Expo, right? So we start building all this small dormitory or partition or whatever you call it, right? We call it the temporary hospital. And then we start using different technology to help in getting the patient. We need to be medical PPE trained. So how do you analyze? And then ultimately, as I mentioned to some of you before, we actually help in providing data and analysis and subsequently AI capabilities to help the government to say, okay, today is 5 people, tomorrow is 8 people, the next day you can have 10 people, right? So how do you know it's 5? Is it 8? Is it 10? Or when do you know you need to wear mask? When can you take down your mask, right? Public transport, hospital, whatever, is a slowly staggered approach, right, to this safe distancing and all these COVID measures. So these are all data driven. It's not somehow someone wake up the next day and think that it should be 5 people and not 10 people. Yeah. And it's not someone wake up to say you should wear mask or should not wear mask. So these are all data driven decision making and subsequently policy making as well. Yeah. So what are the technology we use, right? Plenty of it. Yeah. You probably do not know, but you can read. There was an article. If you search my name, Jim Lim, I think community care facility, you will be able to see a Business Time or Straits Times article that I was interviewed to talk about what we use there, what we do there. That later on I'll show you a book as well. I wrote a last chapter of what we actually help in fighting COVID as a national effort. Yeah. Okay. So very quickly, how do we ensure the patient diligently perform their self-monitoring? Because again, rewind back 4 years ago, now nothing to you, but 4 years ago, we every time measure our temperature, right? And all those things, our vital signs. Remember the government give you that small thing that measure your heart rate and your SpO2, right? I don't know how many of you can still remember. So these are the things that we need to ensure that they do as well, right? These are the small oximeter, yeah? How to ensure asset tracking? So you do not know. In every of this cubicle, we put a patient, and many of them are foreign workers, as you know, right? So we give them an iPad, right, where there's an apps. Then we give them an oximeter, right? Then we give them a thermometer, right? So all these things and blood pressure monitor given to them to make sure that they measure their vital signs on a daily basis. And it's like, I can't remember, is it 3 or 5 times a day? Yeah. Then they need to record into the app so that we can start monitoring, right? So all these are assets as well because the iPad and all those things, and people get discharged as well. So how do you ensure asset tracking? Because it's not that we pity or we want to get this thing back because they are costly and we need to account for that. That's one reason. But more importantly, 4 years ago, you don't know are these contaminated or not. If someone like the iPad so much, they take it out with them, then you lose track, right? Then you may spread the virus. We never know. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we need to think through at that time, which was very interesting if you ask me. Yeah. And of course, you can see video analytics, and we even consider flying drones to do some of the monitoring. Yeah. Okay. So when technology and pandemic meets, right, I presented this many times. You can search for this presentation that I did online as well to many parties that wanted to know, right? So the fun part aside, but AI. So this one, again, not new to you now, right? At that time, nobody ever seen an AI face camera that can measure your temperature. Yeah. So this is there. And of course, after that, it is used for facial recognition for admission, right? So whether it's officers or others. So AI really flourished during pandemic time. Yeah. Okay, these 2 videos, you can take a look. So again, I said before, and I think some of you also say AI helps a lot in automation And you are exactly right. Imagine every day we have few hundred people coming in. And at that time, who dare to volunteer their service? You don't know whether you can come out alive or not, right? So you cannot have enough manpower. You cannot force people to do it, right? People have to go and volunteer to do these services. So we are short of manpower. What do? We use technology, right? So this is the case. You have few hundred people coming in. You have 6 expo halls open, right? How do we handle the patient traffic, right? You need to enter because everyone needs to be identified. So we use AI in this thing called RPA, robotic process automation, to do the data entry, right? Which is this one, right? So this is a sample video that we took, right? And now it's nothing to you, but imagine 4 years ago when everyone is panicked, yeah? So this is very important. And of course, the other one is that we also use robots, right? Like this one, to really do a concierge / patrol / monitoring robot, right? So it give you some form of security, right? So very interesting experience if you ask me. Do I regret doing that? Definitely not, considering now I'm still safe and sound. But at that time, of course, my family and everybody I know have a lot of concerns every day when I go out of the house to say I'm going to volunteer at the facility. Everyone wish me luck and good health. Yeah. Okay. So I would say technology is accelerated, especially AI, during pandemic time. Why do I say so? Right? You are familiar with the temperature self-check kiosk by now, very familiar. What you may not know is that we actually look at this kind of crowd control system, right? So as I say, how do you know is it 5, 8, 10? How do you enforce, right? So we actually have thermal camera and crowd control system, and all these are AI driven, right? There's AI technology inside to detect all these things, right? Then of course, Space MedTech is a company that I'm an advisor to, but at that time, there's also a lot of vital sign monitoring devices that are given to people to bring home, right? So that they can do the monitoring. And in the dormitory, right, like this Space MedTech that I'm an advisor to, during pandemic, their devices, which is a stereoscope, augmented stereoscope that can measure the heart rate and some other vital signs, are given to the dormitory foreign worker to do their self-monitoring as well. And this is all, sorry, someone to say something. Okay, and this is all AI-driven inside, yeah? And again, contact tracing, you are familiar with it. Whether is it a Singapore Trace Together or in national health systems in UK, they have their COVID-19 apps, or in Malaysia, they have their MySejahtera. Many of these are AI-driven inside also for the contact tracing, yeah? Last but not least, this one you probably never heard of it, but it's in use by the government a lot, right? There's this thing called track and trace. So based on the data collected, whether is it through your Trace Together, through your remote monitoring devices, through the thermal cameras, and so on and so forth, it is passed back to backend systems, and AI algorithms are being built to do prediction of the outbreak. So for example, you may here at that time, so many cases in the east of Singapore or west of Singapore, right? So is it more likely that something is happening there, right? So all this are backend AI algorithm, and of course, government use all this data and AI algorithm to predict something and then come out with, I would say, policy at that time, right? To guide what the public should do. Yeah. So definitely AI is already used, and pandemic or COVID actually drive and accelerated government to use AI more for decision making and policy making. Okay, so these are some of the things that if you're interested to read up, right? There are many countries, right? Especially China uses AI to help in fighting COVID, right? So you can, I will not go through all this, but you can actually just click on the link or type in the link and then read some of the things, but definitely it's used a lot. Yeah. Okay, last but not least, a little bit of singing praises to myself. So I actually get a certificate of appreciation for doing the community care facility, right? So it shows that I'm not bluffing you, that I was risking my life to some extent at that time to help in setting this for COVID. Yeah. Okay, and also as a memory, I actually wrote a chapter in this book by the first CIO of Singapore, Professor Alex Xiao, right? He published a book, I think 3 years ago, 2021, I think. I can't remember the exact date, right? So he published a book called Leading with IT, right? If you're interested, you can go to Amazon, Kinokuniya, and some other bookshop to buy online as well, right? You can buy this book. It's not expensive, right? It's not just for IT people. In fact, there isn't too much technical terms or coding or programming. It's a lot of experience from him as a first CIO in HDB, right? What he do, how he set up the entire IT function in Singapore as a first CIO of Singapore. So it's a very nice reading book, if you ask me. There's a lot of project management tools, and then things like how to foster innovation, how to handle change, right? So it's not a technical book to read if you're interested. And I wrote the last chapter, right, called the epilogue, right, Innovating in the Trenches, which is really talking about my experience in the entire community care facilities, which I spent there about 9 months. Apart from my normal daily work, I actually volunteered there for 9 months as well to help in this thing. Yeah. Okay. So now let's look at the intersection of political systems and AI. Okay, so just now we've seen AI definitely, and I think by now you agree with me that AI helps a lot in public administration. Okay, and COVID shows its worth, right? But then we also see the AI is impacting a lot of other things, including especially election, right? A lot of fake things as well. So we also say AI has its own pros and cons in different areas. So if we look at it, AI is really reshaping politics or political systems, right? It influences the governance, the elections, and the power dynamics as well, right? So what are the things that we should look out for, right? So in terms of governance and decision making, right, it is definitely used. AI is definitely used, right? When I say AI, of course, includes the data, right? Without data, AI is nothing, right? They need data. So when I say AI, it means together with data here, right? It's used to analyze vast data set, right? Because again, human brain and human eyes are limited by the processing power that we have, okay? Not all of us are Mensa people, right? So definitely AI, because it's programs, right? It can, and with the large storage, cloud computing power, and complex algorithm, it can analyze vast data sets, right? And of course, it can use to predict trends, like what we see in the pandemic outbreak prediction already, right? And use that to inform policy decisions. But again, over-reliance on AI-driven decisions can raise questions about accountability and transparency, right? So for example, the city of Chicago used AI to predict high-risk crime areas, right? So that is good, right? Because you can allocate resources, because your police and others may be limited resources, right? So you can improve that resource allocation by using AI to predict, just like how AI used to predict where's the outbreak going to happen. But it can be biased also, right? So for example, let's say you identify the black areas in US as a high-risk crime area. Would you put more resources there? Or is it really just because there are more blacks living there, right? You think that it is high risk. So it really depends on how AI is used and how biased in your algorithm it is. Yeah. The next area is democracy and citizens' engagement. I think this one, I don't need to talk too much. We already seen many cases. And of course, the simplest one is chatbot. Yeah. But of course, Estonia is a case study that offers 99% of public service online, right? So they think it's good, right? But of course, in Singapore, we already seen in the survey and the pie chart I show you, right, presented by Smart Office, the Digital Nation Office, right? We decide to use more for internal efficiency more than citizen engagement, because any problems can cause a public outcry and create doubts on the use of AI, right? So Singapore, being more cautious, is a little bit slower in terms of citizen engagement, unlike Estonia case where 99% of the public service are done online. Yeah. Of course, power dynamics. Yeah. So AI enables government and corporation to consolidate power via surveillance and data control, right? So it may reduce civil liberties and creating surveillance states, right? So this is something that one of the reasons why the democratic political systems like India, like US, and to some extent Europe, right? In fact, to a larger extent, Europe is slower in fast-tracking AI adoption. I mean, I help a Swiss company currently, so I talk to my counterpart in Europe a lot, in Switzerland, in Germany. They always envy that Singapore move quite fast with AI adoption. One reason is that, yes, we have control like PDPA, right? Personal Data Protection Act. But PDPA, if you look through, have time, look through the entire PDPA, is still more lenient as compared to the European GDPR. Yeah. So that's something that, well, AI in APAC is faster adoption, and it may actually shift some of the power dynamics as well, right? So one of the typical cases that we know China is a good case for AI adoption, one of the fastest, right? But that also created some noise, right? There's this China social credit systems, if you do not already know, right? It actually assign scores to every citizen's to every citizen based on their behavior, and the scores can actually guide them on what they can do and what they cannot do, right? But again, this one, people first concerned about the data privacy. Oh, Dr. James Ong is in so fast. Okay, so they are concerned about the data privacy, and then some of them are worried about the bias. Some are not happy about the surveillance, right? Because I may classify you as a lower credit score, and then I put a surveillance on you, right? Then you're not happy about that, right? Because it may be biased, and even if it's not biased, I don't like the surveillance, right? The next area that AI will create is the national security, right? So AI enhances national security for sure, but it also raises, like we say, right, ethical dilemmas. So how much control is enough, and how much is too much, right? So this is a fine line, a thin line to thread, and many countries are still reviewing that and fine-tuning it along the way. And of course, on the not so good side, right? I don't have a video here, but I can show you in the next class. There's AI killer robots, right? That's a fake video if you already seen that, right? That is happening, right? So people are talking about, oh, is it good to use AI to create like autonomous weapon system or killer robots, right? Which people are concerned about the use of AI, although you can create it in the name of national security. Okay. The next area, of course, is economic impact. So AI has the potential to drive economic growth, right? Because just now we already seen, right, the Google case, and even my own experience in the community care facilities, it helps in automating a lot of tasks, right? And that helps to tackle a larger patient population as well. Okay, but of course, that also means that with more automation, especially RPA, robotic process automation, would it create some job losses, or that probably will create some of the public dissatisfaction, right? Which already happened, but of course, in Singapore, government will always say, "Oh, I'm giving you a skill futures credits." Right, you can upskill and other things, right? And again, there will be another school of thoughts to say we've gone through Industry Revolution 3 times, we're in Industry Revolution 4.0 now. So it's just a nature that some jobs will be displaced, some new jobs will be created. And in the last class, we already discussed that as well, right? Some jobs are gone and some jobs are created, and people need to adapt themselves for that. Okay, so that's the intersection of political systems and AI. Okay, so I will not go through this slide, but again, if you want to read more about these topics, right, these are some of the good references that you can look at it as well, right? Very nice case that I talk about China's social credit systems. I work and live in China for a while, and definitely very interested in this part, right? Just now we show Estonia government, actually 99% of government services is online, and using some of them even using AI to drive it, right? As compared to Singapore, is a more conservative approach, starting with internal productivity and efficiency first before we go into a public engagement. Okay. So if we look at the AI and political systems, so we don't go through all those, all the 6 political systems we talk about, but let's focus on 4 of them: democracy, authoritarianism, monarchy, and republic, right? So they have different emphasis, right? Democratic political system focus a lot on public trust and accountability, right? And then their focus is a lot on transparency and explainability as well, right? So you can see emphasize and focus is to some extent overlap, right? Then as compared to the authoritarianism, right, emphasis is a lot on efficiency and control, right, and as well as the focus. So we saw China case, right? Let's do it this way. I want to do a social credit scoring. Let's do it, and we just do it, right? But democratic, you need to go through voting. You need to explain. You need to get the public support and all those things. So it may take longer time to some extent. Monarchy, I would say, generally it will be towards democratic political system, as we say, right? You can have the absolute one like Saudi Arabia, which may be more decided by the top, like the king, the queen, or some others. Then you have the more less absolute one, right? Which is like UK, right? The king or the queen is just a figurehead to some extent, have some power. Ultimately, it will be more falling back to democracy. So you still need to have some form of voting and accountability, but a lot of things is focusing on stability as well. Right? In a republic case, it is very similar to democratic society or democratic political systems, right? That you need to ensure there's transparency and efficiency and accountability as well. Okay. In terms of public participation, not surprisingly, right, democratic political system definitely promote a lot of public participation, right? In Singapore, for the past few times, whenever they are going to have important policies to be made, sometimes I get emails from government to say, do you want to participate in this focus group and all those things? So definitely they will encourage public participation for certain areas. But of course, we also know that the Singapore government have think tank, right? Which later on, when we introduce Dr. James, he's also think tank for something here and there internationally as well, right? So think tank is one of the mechanisms that is some form of public participation, but more limited, right? So in pure democratic, they promote a lot of public participation. In authoritarianism like China, there will be much less, of course, right? And then in a monarchy, right, they may have some, but they also want to look at the figurehead to decide what needs to be done, right? And in republic, like in Singapore case, you have a think tank and you have public participation as well, right? So that's why just now we keep on saying that what is Singapore, right? Officially it's republic, but it has a nature and hybrid of a few of them together as well. Okay. From an impact perspective, in a democratic political systems, right, there's a lot of prioritization about individual privacy. Okay, so there's stricter regulations on data collection, right, and the use of AI in public administration. But of course, in cases like China, right, government have access to most of the data, and then they can fast track and accelerate AI implementation and adoption, as we can see. Because, yeah, people can raise concern about privacy, about data protection law. The government may or may not listen, depending on the use case itself, right? So this is something that's happening in China, good and bad. Okay. And of course, monarchy and republic, again, is a balance and in between these two itself. Yeah. So example, in the democratic systems, we have seen a lot of chatbots and AI-powered public service. There's a lot of data-driven policy analysis. Whereas in countries like China, under the authoritarianism or Soviet Union or Russia, we call it now, right? There's a lot of citizen surveillance as well, and maybe North Korea as well. Yeah. And then in republic and monarchy, again, is in between both of them, right? Now, government in AI for public administration. Okay, so global adoption wise, right, you can see that the global AI adoption index, America or North America is still ranked #1, right? Although we may thought that China is actually quite high, right? But global AI index, North America is still #1, right? Of course, different countries have different AI focus and opportunity, right? And later on, we'll see one slide about whether there's enough laws and regulations right? Does certain countries already have an AI strategy, and so on and so forth? So maybe I just go into the Singapore case. You can read about Saudi, Canada, and others, right? But definitely Singapore, especially this year, there are so many AI initiatives that the government announced, right? That you can definitely read about that, right? So one of the latest one is that Singapore aims to strengthen its position as a global business and innovation hub by investing more than $1 billion, right, into artificial intelligence over the next 5 years, right? So this one is part of our national budget announcement. Okay. So I think that's one of the reasons why you are also attending an AI class, right? And there are so many requests. I was also asked to create an AI masterclass for the C-suite for NUS as well. So it's like I was jokingly telling people, right? If you want to get funding for your projects or you want to set up a company, you just make sure it has an AI or Gen AI flavor of it, then it will make things much easier. Okay. I don't know for good or for bad. Okay. So if we look at how government is harnessing AI to create innovations, right? So again, just now we have seen a few Singapore case study, but again, in Japan, right, they have this thing called Society 5.0 initiative, right? So they really look at how to integrate AI into every aspect of the society, right? It's like into the life. Smart cities is normal. It has been there. Singapore is a smart nation or smart city because we are nation equal to city in Singapore, right? So it's not new, but smart city talks a lot about video analytics, right? Smart lamppost that has analytics, and then you can do a smart traffic control or AI powered traffic control from there, right? Even AI based lighting, energy management. So these are all the part of things. And of course, last class, we also talk a lot about predictive maintenance in infrastructure. Yeah. If we look at closer to home in Singapore, right, there are many AI initiatives. One of them is the National AI Strategy, right? We also have like AI Verify, right, which invite people to kind of validate and verify some of the AI algorithms as well, right? But in terms of our National AI Strategy, right, it focuses on two key goals. One is definitely excellence, and the other one is empowerment. Right. So we want to empower responsible use of AI by individual and community. So every time, let's say we decide to come up with an AI algorithm or applications, right, we need to make sure that someone is accountable for that, right? So we empower you to do that, but you need to be responsible and accountable as well. Okay, of course, like what we see in the cases that we do in the COVID-19 pandemic case in the community care facility I was involved in, there's a lot of excellence and productivity gains and efficiency gains from using of AI. Okay, sorry, near my office there is construction at night. Okay. But of course, there are also a lot of challenges, as we discussed, that is presented by AI, right? One of them is China social credit systems, right? So there's a lot of challenges. People are questioning the surveillance, like we discussed, right? At the private data privacy and other things as well. And then when we say in US, right, again, the bias, right, is part of it when we talk about the facial recognition program. So types of AI governance, there are three types that you can do a broad classification, right? First one is principle-based, right? Then risk-based and compliance-based. So if we look at what is principle-based, right? This framework actually outlines the ethical principles, right? So we look at, okay, is there enough fairness? Is there enough accountability? Is there enough transparency, right? The AI system needs to adhere to. And there are many global initiative or standards body like the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, IEEE, right, on some of these principles as well, right? So of course, the strength of this is that you can have a good high-level compass of the ethical AI development, right? And it's flexible, but the weakness is that it can be a little bit vague, and then it lack of concrete implementation guidelines. Okay. If we go to the risk base, right? It focuses a lot on risk, right, before any principles or accountability or transparency. So it's risk focused. So the famous one is NIST, right? There's a security standards or security framework that many countries actually use it, including our cybersecurity agency, use it to do some kind of risk-based framework, right? So this one is good because it focuses a lot on managing the potential harms, right? But the weakness of it is that you need a lot of risk assessment, and that can be complex and resource heavy. Okay. And compliance based, this is with specific rules and regulations, right? The AI system needs to comply to, right? So there's a EU AI Act that was announced, right? And we'll look at it later. What are other types of or other countries that have some form of laws and rules and regulations that we need to adhere to? Okay. So the other one is AI governance maturity model, right? Again, you can have different level of maturity, right? One is definitely there's no AI governance process, and that there's still a lot of countries at that level one, right? Then you slowly move on to, let's say, you have some best practices for responsible AI development, right? So when most countries go into that, right, they will start with that stage as well, right? Looking at what example best practices or some of the rules and regulations that other countries have done, and then they use that to guide their development of their AI practices or rules and regulations and laws as well, right? Then you move on to different stages. You have there will be dedicated individual or team, right, or even department or ministry to look at the AI governance. So in Singapore case, we also have AI Singapore, which is less of a regulatory body, but it actually developed quite a lot of AI governance and standards as well that help the I can't remember what's the latest name, but it was the Ministry of Communication, right, together with MDA, Smart Nation Office, to look at all these things as well, right? Then of course you progress into like AI ethics, right, where you will focus a lot on the ethical consideration, right, before just looking at the application and the implementation of AI. Yeah. Then of course you have a oversight where you have a very strict governance practice, and you can have a lot of regulatory bodies to focus on a multi-stakeholder initiative. Okay, so that's the AI maturity model itself. Of course, the good thing is that it gives some guidance, and it's not just AI. If you notice in many technology world, there's a lot of what we call maturity model. We have like digital transformation maturity model. We identify which stage the company or the country is in, right, in terms of that digital transformation, and then we give suggestions on what they should do, right, and how do they move from one stage to another stage, right? So one good thing about any maturity model, I'll say, is simple and easy to understand. In terms of AI side, right, there's a social responsibility because you look at the social impact of AI. And then, of course, you have guidance on what needs to be done, because to move from one maturity level to another maturity level, the person or the company or the country or the regulatory bodies who develop such maturity model will have some guidance to guide them to move from one stage to the next higher level. Yeah. Of course, this one ties back with continuous improvement as well. Okay, so what are the challenges of AI in a globalized world, right? So, of course, AI systems are often operate across borders, right? So it's difficult to know which law to apply and who is responsible to regulate them, right? Again, some of the example, I can have an autonomous vehicle traveling from Singapore to Malaysia, right? If this autonomous vehicle knock into someone in Malaysia, but it's a Singapore registered car, who is responsible? Which law, right? You may have a different law between Singapore and Malaysia to guide the use of autonomous vehicle in that sense, right? But of course, currently both don't have, but one day you may have totally different laws and regulations in both. So that's why there's a lot of AI consortium, which I think later on Dr. James will talk about that with his experience in the ASEAN and regional space. Yeah. Then, of course, diverse regulatory landscape, right? Again, in ASEAN, it's still quite okay. We are more or less, yes, we have Singapore, which is more developed than our neighboring countries, but they are also very diverse regulatory landscape, especially in countries like Europe, right? It's very, very diverse, right? You have the Eastern Europe, the Western Europe. Of course, you have the European Union, but it's very, very diverse. Okay. And of course, you can have global digital divide, right? Because different countries may have different level of maturity and the AI adoption, right? So there's something to note as well. Wow. Okay, speed of innovation, again, that's different, right? Because AI is evolving rapidly, right? So it's difficult to keep pace with the regulatory development and enforcement as well. Of course, last but not least, we discussed a lot already. There's a lot of complex ethical issues, right? To really put AI governance into a globalized world or even in a country itself, yeah? So again, I wouldn't go through details of this, right? So these are some of the frameworks and regulations that if you're interested, you can read about that. Okay. International cooperation, I will leave this more to Dr. James to share, especially from a regional perspective, but definitely, as we say, to counter or to tackle some of the challenges we saw just now in terms of different countries have different level of adoption, maturity, rules and regulations. There's a lot of countries are trying to cooperate together, right? So EU, G7, OECD, these are the different examples of international cooperation. Okay. So that kinds of conclude the chapter 3 itself. Any questions from anyone? If not, I saw that Dr. James actually joined us early. Thanks for that. Right. So maybe we can take a quick 10 minutes break and then we come back and I will introduce Dr. James to you and then we will have a fireside chat with Dr. James. Okay. So let's come back at 8:30, right? 8:32, now it's 8:22. Okay, 8:32, let's come back. So let's have a 10 minutes break. And thanks, Dr. James, for joining early. Hey, hi, Dr. James. You're on mute.
Hey, Jim.
Hey,
Is it
thanks
okay? Signal is good?
Good. Yeah, and voice is clear. Yeah.
Okay, good. Look forward to the conversation with you and with the class as
Sure.
well.
Yeah. So you may want to grab a drink. They are all grabbing their toilet break, and we just finished about 1.5 hours.
Yeah, let them take a short break.
Yes.
Anyway, it's early.
Yeah.
And there also I have some slides,
Good.
which I can cover more or less. Some of them are backup just in case they want to ask more details. That's all.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. And so maybe I'll go and get a drink also. So we come back in
Okay.
8:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, huh? Welcome back, everyone. Okay, I think there is a request from Dr. James that he wanted to see all your pretty faces. So you don't mind, can just on your camera to make sure that you are there listening to our great guest speaker. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, possible to set so that such that I can share the slide?
Sure, let me.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Can you?
Not. It should be enabled. Yeah.
Wait a minute,
Need to be enabled.
I need to make you a co-host. Are you able to share now?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
now.
good.
Good. I'll do that later on.
So maybe I give a quick introduction about Dr. James. Are all the students back? Can you just on your camera to show that you are back? If you are really in a inconvenient place, that's still okay.
It'll be good to see you all. At least I have a sense of who you are. It'll be good. Hello. Hello, Samuel. I can see Samuel. I can see Hurrell. I can see Shen Wei.
Shen Wei sounds like my sister's name.
Yeah, I can see Arvin. I can see Kagan, right? Kagan.
Kagan.
Muhammad Surya bin Sulai. I mentioned all your names so that you know that I can see you. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, there's class participation mark if you do not already know. So every time whoever responds, I'm taking screenshots to award the class participation mark.
Hey, Elro. Wei Hao. Yes, should be good. I normally like to do offline classes so I can see the audience and have conversations. Yeah. But at least good to see you. Qiao Rou. I think so. Qiao Rou. I hope I'm getting it correct. Jadish. Hello, Jadish. Good. I'm seeing more and more faces now.
Coming back. It's a night class.
Yes. Wow, these are hardworking students. Mr. Lam Sao Hua.
Some of them are working adults as well, so you can imagine.
Yeah, I can see Dylan. Wow. Suddenly the whole Zoom become alive.
Yes.
It feels very different. It's like it's real now.
That's a good thing about having guest speaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I hope I will not
they don't
disappoint
turn
you
on
all.
for me, they turn on for you only.
Wow, that's good. Actually, it's very different to speak to an audience. Hey, Raphael.
Hi, Prof. Hi.
Wow, you guys some of you are very young. Excellent. Wow, this one is tough. Oh. Sia Diba, right? Looks like you're in the gym. It's okay. So I think I can see 10, 20, 23, right? Yeah. Nasrim and Professor Jim. Anytime you want to start, you let me know.
Sure. Yep. Can. So maybe I do a quick intro of Dr. James first. So some of you who are probably full-time student of SUSS, you may have received some EDM telling you that there is a lot of speakers coming to talk about different areas and there's some master class. So Dr. James actually conducted one of the master class for SUSS as well, right, at the whole university level. So we are very honored to have him with us for today's fireside talk, fireside chat, yeah. And he of course also has something to share. But a quick introduction about Dr. James, right? He actually has more than 38 years of experience doing many things, right? He's an entrepreneur, right? He's also a tech executive. He's a venture builder. And of course, he writes books, and later on, I'm sure he will share with you his book, right? And he's also a professor teaching at many universities, like I mentioned, the masterclass of SUSS as well, yeah. And he's definitely an AI authority in this part of our world, right? And in fact, even to US, right? He founded the Artificial Intelligence International Institute, AIII, right? Which is an AI think tank and he also co-author a book called AI for Humanities, Building a Sustainable AI for the Future, right? Same thing is published by Wiley. So just now, before you joined, Dr. James, I was sharing that I wrote a chapter for Prof. Alex Xiao on the first CIO book, right? The last chapter, which talk about a lot of technology, including AI use in the healthcare, right? But you wrote the whole book. So I wrote one chapter, okay? Dr. James is also a young professor at SUTD and AI Mega Center, right? He got his PhD from University of Texas at the Austin, right? And specialized in AI for governance and business process automation. So he's definitely your perfect person you can ever get to talk about AI for governance and for all this public services and others. So let's welcome Dr. James, yeah? You can do a virtual clap. Yeah.
Thank you. Shall I start? Oh,
sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, really, first of all, appreciate you guys at this hour joining me. What I'm gonna do is share something very quickly with you all, like 5-10 minutes. Then I think Professor Jim is gonna go to a conversation. I'd like to hear question from you all because that's the best way, and you makes it very interesting and fruitful. And hopefully that will get your attention to want to understand more. Feel free to ask any question, and nothing is difficult. As such, I'm going to share the slide. Can you all see the slide?
Yep, it has just come up.
Oh, okay, 1 second. I'm trying to figure out how to operate. Okay, good. Wonderful. Let me see. Is it being shown? Okay, you guys can see what it is, right? So the topic Professor Jim has shared with me is about challenges of regulating AI, which is a very big topic, right? So first of all, quickly about myself, okay? So this is the book that was just published in June, which I co-authored with two other authors. We call Andy Ma, he's a risk management expert, and then Ms. Tan Shok Shok, which is a filmmaker, also a writer. And I myself has been in AI for 38 years. So this book that I have been dying to write for a long time, especially in the last 10 years, before the arrival of the ChatGPT. If you pay attention to the logo, there's a lot of meaning in it, which I'm not going to let you know what it is yet. You can look at the diagram. You can find it on Amazon. Go and search for AI for Humanity on Amazon. You can find us. We have 5 reviews there. And try to look into the logo and interpret yourself. And feel free to share later on and ask me any questions, okay? In fact, some very interesting scholar actually look at it and find it very intriguing. So this is how the books, okay? And this book is published by Wiley. So the book has 10 chapters, basically AI debate, AI trap, AI history, AI dilemma, rethinking AI. Then we talk about sustainable AI for humanity in terms of governance, technology, and commercialization. And regulating is actually part of the governance. Then I talk about what are the things we are advocating for AI for humanity, and this part of the book. So last night, I met up with Minister Chi Hong Tak. He's a Minister of Transportation on the right-hand side. Also the Deputy Minister of Finance. Also Deputy Chairman of MAS at the Economic Society of Singapore last night. And I managed to give him a book. He took a picture with me. On the right-hand side is Minister Josephine Teo. I met her 2 weeks ago. I also gave her a copy of the book. Yeah, because these are the leaders who are actually driving many of the policy in Singapore. And also we have been involved in different speakers from Google to NUS and different thought leaders in Singapore, in media as well. And many other people actually were involved in many of the exhibition and booth that we are involved in. Seems to me it's pretty well received, and for the reason because we are all human. We want AI in this coming wave actually serving us as humanity. And this is not a simple questions. And I hope you all will actually intrigued by the conversation we have today. So AIII is a think tank. It's called Artificial Intelligence International Institute. It's called AIII. But there's something called a triple AI. AAI that was actually formed as one of the earliest, in fact, the earliest organization in artificial intelligence. I leave it to you to go and find out what is AAAI, and you can ask me a question later on during the class. So that is another second question. One is the logo. What does it mean? Second, why I choose to set up a think tank called AIII, because there's something called triple AI before in the setup in the US. So why the think tank basically is to advocate sustainable for humanity, which I explained that what I mean. It was set up in 2017. So we do three things. One is thought leadership, unique thought. We think independently, freedom of thought. We engage ecosystem, like what I'm doing right now, sharing with you. You're part of the ecosystem, and there are specific initiatives we want to make happen so that we can act to make an impact on society. And what those things are, there are actually many issues related to AI, which I can share later on. So sustainable for you, what does it mean? Basically, in many of you, if you are not familiar, or you heard about OpenAI, they have something called alignment project. So the first priority is to make sure that we govern AI for humanity, aligned to us humanity values. So that is something important about why we are regulating AI, but regulating is just part of it. So alignment is very important. Second, we want to talk about sustainability of AI itself, because AI has gone through 70 plus years of history, 2 winters. So we want to make sure we don't go into another winter. And third, we want to align AI development to meet the United Nations Sustainability Development Goal. There's 17 of them. For those of you who are not familiar about what is United Nations SDG, please look it up. So there's a third thing I want you to go and find out for yourself, for your own knowledge, and you'll be amazed how much it makes a difference to you as for your education if you find out about this 3 things today. Fourth, some of you may know what is Singapore Computer Society. Everybody in computing should know. And recently, there's a version 2.0 of the body of knowledge on AI ethics and governance. I wrote a paper called Why Sustainable AI is a Collective Responsibility, which is talking about how we in ASEAN, which is about 10 countries in Southeast Asia, we need to collectively work together to build sustainable AI for our own benefit, for our own economic development, and for our own safety. So last but not least, I'm working on something called a new theory on the future of leadership with AI for humanity. Basically, in simple terms, is thinking about how you think in the era of AI, so how AI can play a role. I'm not going to share too much on it, but if it's intriguing to you, feel free to ask me more questions. Second, I want to do quickly about AI history. Some of you can easily go online and search for history of AI from the 50s onwards until now. In fact, there are many more. So I want to show you one chart. So this is a chart that is a very good summary of a lot of AI dilemma, boom and bust, winters and disguise. So you look at the 2 mountain. In between there is, on top there are 3 booms of different type of AI, from good old fashioned AI, GOFA, to expert system and machine learning, which is something most of you are familiar with. And there's 2 mountain, which is the 2 boom in AI. In between there are 2 winter. And I am actually started my career in 1986, somewhere here in the second boom. And there are all kind of AI technology that has happened. Then it went to a winter. So one of the purpose of what we are doing here is, I'm doing here is to make sure that we're in the 3rd boom right now. Hopefully you don't go into the winter. And if we do go into a winter, we have way to manage that. But what's interesting is that some of you may not know, you have been using AI since 1998, every day as a consumer. The moment you started using Google, you've been using AI. Google has always been an AI company, except they could not say they are because they are during the winter time. But because of that, you have been influenced by AI algorithm at Google, at Amazon, at Facebook, and Alibaba and Tencent, before AI become emergent in the latest year. Before that, in the 70s, 80s, which I was involved in, there are actually many AI implementation and startup as well. So I call this period in the 90s to 2010 called the AI in disguise. So there are implications when AI is in disguise. It's about regulating AI. But if you're in disguise, you don't know how to regulate, right? So this is another question I want to prompt to you for you to think about. If we do not know AI is being used, you will never know how to regulate it, right? So that's something you want to think about. And of course, since the 1993, there have been many think tanks being set up to be ready for the future of AI in terms of what are the problem and risks. You can see in 1993, the Montreal Institute of in Canada, the Future of Life Institute in 2015, and that's why I set up AIII in 2017 to make sure that we are actually planning ahead to mitigate some of the risks that's coming up, because there'll be many AI dilemma we'll be facing. Next, I want to talk about AI headlines. You got to pay attention to this because these are the latest headlines. And the AI headlines, these are news you probably got every day, but I picked some of the things for your entertainment. I hope I get to entertain you now, okay? Number one, AI headline news. Well, basically, a lot of board members are worried about AI risk, whether if you don't implement AI, it's also risky. If you implement, also risky. So they are at a very difficult situation. If you're looking for a job for a company, well, this is what the leaders are facing right now, because there are a lot of complexity in terms of using or not using AI. Then there's also news about in fast companies saying that we're heading for a generative AI winter. Gen AI winter is going to go into the winter. You probably wonder why, Then the people are saying that the bubble is actually bigger than the 90s in terms of the tech bubble. So that is another warning sign. And then you probably heard about AI being used in the Gaza war, and talking about the military is able to use algorithm to target and decide who live and who die. And that's pretty scary when we delegate that kind of decision in weapons and war. And of course, many of you, if you know about Davos, which is in World Economic Forum, one of the largest, most important event every year in Davos. This is where the elite come together. All the conversations about the conference, instead of economic forum, they're all talking about AI. There must be some reason why is this happening at the most elite level. Then if you look at the United Nations last year, suddenly after the ChatGPT, after 4 to 6 months, the United Nations said they want to set up a new organization to do AI. That's pretty drastic, right? So there must be some reason. So if you are not aware, please be aware. I'm sure the Secretary General is not dumb. There are reasons why he's calling for that. So these people are thinking about it. If they are thinking about it, you should be thinking about it, because it may affect your career or affect your children's education and maybe affect your livelihood in the future. Then the Pope, Catholic Vatican Pope, was actually at the G7, and he is also stepping out and talk about he's worried about AI, whether AI is objective, it's not neutral. So he's worried as a religious leader. Then some of you probably know Henry Kissinger. He was at 99-year-old last year. He went to Beijing, and he warned that and then after a few months he died. He said he warned about the danger of AI, and he's worried about how we humans need to tackle the issue of AI as just like the Second World, just like nuclear technology since the Second World War. So they want us to treat this thing very seriously, just like nuclear technology. And I agree with him. Then Geoffrey Hinton, normally in the classroom, I'll ask, do you guys know him, or do you know? I have no idea whether you know or not. But Geoffrey Hinton is a godfather of deep learning. He invented many of the technique in deep learning that's responsible for many of the AI boom today. He was not worried about AI before the ChatGPT. After ChatGPT, he was really very worried. He felt worried that this is it's going to threaten our humanity's existence. Then, of course, Elon Musk has been warning us since 2017. And Elon Musk, no matter you agree or disagree with him, he's definitely not a dumb guy. Then, of course, a scientist called Stephen Hawking actually warned about this. He mentioned that the development of full AI could spell the end of the human race. Wow, why is he saying that? You should be asking that questions. And recently, there was a talk by Eric Schmidt, the ex-chairman and CEO of Google. I'm just curious how many people actually watched this video. Please raise your hand. Wow, okay, good. You will find it very entertaining to watch this video, trust me. Because this speech at Stanford was not supposed he didn't know it's being recorded and televised live. So he gave very candid input during the talk. And therefore you hear from the guy who is the ex-CEO and chairman of Google talking about what's happening in AI in the US. And because he advised the US government, he also advised the US military. And inside there, he talked about many technology on the left-hand side, from context window to AI agent to text to action. I'm not going to go through that. These are things you can watch the video. Talk about TikTok ban. Then you talk about how you can use AI agent to steal information and hire a lawyer to protect yourself. You talk about the AI superpower dominance between US and China, how the AI race across the world. But to me, those are quite obvious. We all know that. But I think the thing he talked about that was interesting is that at the US level, at the very top level, they are talking about one of the challenges they face is how to detect dangers in AI system as they build AI system, whether it's for government, national security, or military. He said that as AI system learn many dangerous knowledge, they cannot tell specifically what it is that they have learned. They have no idea. There's no way to know. And they don't even know how to ask the AI system to tell it. And that really raised my ghost pimples. It's almost like they are trying to build something you have no idea when they get into a dangerous mode. And that's the kind of world we are facing right now moving forward. And this is at the forefront. Eric Smith is right in the middle of everything, and he happened to share all these things at Stanford without thinking that it wasn't televised or recorded. But somehow he didn't know when it was televised, somebody actually downloaded it. Therefore, even though they take it down from YouTube, it's already too late. Yeah. So I highly recommend you all to watch it. If you want to do any about AI, this is a video you must watch, right? Yeah, so right now, with all this, AI is at the crossroad. Thank you very much. I want to share, this is what I want to share. And yeah, I want to get into the conversation with Jim and with all of you. Yeah. I'm curious, do you find this information helpful? Please raise your hand. Good. At least I see 3, 4, or 5. Yeah, always remember, you do not know what you do not know. My job being here together with Professor Jim is to let you know what you know, let you know that you do not know what you do not know. Now you know what you do not know. So it's up to you to go and take what the cue is and go and look it up on Google, YouTube, TikTok, and find out all this thing. And I assure you, just watching the Eric Smith video will enhance your knowledge about AI, at least up to today, okay, at the most forefront, okay? So, Professor Jim, shall I open the floor to you first? And everybody, I'll let you moderate, yes.
Sure. So instead of me asking, I mean, I have a lot of questions for sure. Maybe I get you guys to start asking first, right? Anyone want to start? In fact, like I mentioned in the chat, it's very helpful for your TMA01, right? Which I kind of went through with you guys at the start of today's class, right? So apart from my own slides, I think Dr. James, if we can get some of your slides, will be good as well later on to distribute.
Sure.
Yeah, if possible, right? The sanitized version, because it will help in their TMA, their first assignment, which is to explain the importance of understanding the history and past challenges of AI revolution, right? So I explained some, I think you explained a lot more, right? Why is it there are 2 winters, how do we prevent the next winter from coming, right? And then everyone is predicting there's a 3rd winter. So what should we do, right? And then show some of the common characteristics of AI winters. And I think last but not least is you guys can ask this question to Dr. James as well, right? How can we, through understanding the history and past challenges of AI evolution, better navigate the complexity of AI development responsibly, right? So basically, I think we all see from your slide, from my slides, that there's a lot of advantages of using AI, and there's a lot of concerns from an ethical perspective and from privacy perspective. So from your experience, right, how do we kind of balance the both, right? We want to have the best of both worlds, just like anything in life, right? We want best of both worlds, but we know it's not possible. So from your experience in the region globally, what do you think is the best a country should do to kind of try to strike the balance of both and maximizing the benefit of both?
Yeah, that's a question to me, right? Is that correct? Yeah. I would say first thing I would say is the following. Probably if I look at all of you right now, very helpful. I look at your facial expression, right? Most people think this is governing AI is a government's job, especially in Singapore, because we have a very good government. That's probably your first reaction. I have to let you know, just like climate change, everybody have responsibility, except there's one thing you need to know. Because if the latest form of AI, you actually take data, right, to train it, right, at least in the large language model. All of us are contributing the data. That's one, to make it what it is. If you don't contribute data, you also have impact on it because you are not represented. Your voice is not represented. Or if your languages is not included in the large language, you're also not represented. So everybody has a role to play, because that's first thing I want to mention about in terms of how we have managed AI or regulating AI. You actually providing data and or not providing data determine the outcome, how AI become. You're actually by de facto regulating it by opting yourself up or opting yourself in, right? So that's one thing I like to mention. Second, there's always this thing about innovation and versus regulation. I actually have a much broader framework than that because I think that is a bit too simplistic. Because which I want to trigger the question to the audience, right? First of all, if you want to govern something, right, you need to know what it is, right? So the first question is that how many of you know what is AI, right? If you don't know what is AI, how do you govern, right? Basically, right? You have to know what it is first, right? Then you have to know what you want to use it for or how you want to monetize it, right? Then you know how to regulate, right? So I think that is an important aspect I'd like to let you all know. When you want to govern something, you know what it is. Now, how many people know what is AI? So that's the first question I asked, right? Maybe one of the students would like to ask this question, may want to share your perspective. Do not worry about being right and wrong. Not knowing, asking a question also help the rest of the student. Knowing also help the rest of the student, right? So we need you to speak up. Anybody want to make an attempt? What is AI, right? No takers? I think, Jim, your voice is off.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just saying that don't worry, right? I mean, there's no right or wrong. It's all about participation. Yeah.
Yes, don't be shy because it's very important. So basically, here is the thing, right? If you want to regulate something, you need to know what it is because otherwise you cannot regulate effectively. But AI is not an easy thing to understand. Actually, it's very complex. And so I think that is actually discussed in my book. There are several characteristics that I felt is very important, right? And anybody, again, give me one more shot. Anybody want to say something about what is AI? Okay, I see. Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think the class sometimes is shy, so someone type in the chat. I think from Dylan, right? Machines
let
that
me
can
see.
simulate human intelligence. Yeah, that's from my slides. But that's
Okay.
part of it, yes.
That's a good start. Yeah. Okay, that is simulate or you're describing what it is, right? Okay, that's good. It's actually, yeah, actually AI is a type of thing. It's called artificial intelligence, right? It's basically human trying to understand ourselves, to try to create machine to do what we could, right? And as you all know, a human invented the plane, which is different from bird, right? We invented car that's different from the horse that we ride on, right? So the AI you invented using machine may be different from human also. We think we want to mimic it, but it may not be exactly the same, right? But there's one thing I like to share with you all is that AI is different from any other technology we have ever invented in the human history. And that's a very serious statement. It's different from anything because it's something that we want to create. If you look at you're creating a car, you invented the plane, you invented the printing machine, right? These are just machine that you created and you use it. You invented a mobile phone, right? You invented telecom and etc. But AI, by its nature, it was designed to be self-learning. Important, It was designed to self-learn. That's why machine learning is about learning, right? It's to learn, it's to evolve. As you learn, you keep evolving. You become just like us. As we learn, we become a different evolution. So the version of you when you're born and the version of you 10 years later, the version of you 20 years later is different, right? Because as you learn, you develop biologically, physically, also mentally. The mental part is a big part of the evolution. In fact, you learn all the way until you die, if your brain is healthy, but your body may deteriorate. But your mind is always developing. And guess what? If you keep learning and evolving, just like Darwin's law, right? You don't know what you're going to evolve into, right? Because all humans are organic. We keep organic biologically, right? But AI as a machine actually evolved digitally, right? And it's actually stronger than human in a way because our biology has a lifelong lifespan about what, 100 to 200 years old? But the machine can live forever. They keep replacing the parts, right? The CPU can be changed, the memory can be changed, the shell can be changed, right? So when you have things that keep evolving, and if you learn faster than we do, you do not know what it can be evolved into. Just like if you have children, right, and you nurture them, you don't know where they're going to evolve into, basically, right? Because they can grow out and become something, depending who they interact with and work with. I wonder, is that something intriguing to you all? If you look at a cup that you use, right, it's something we invented. It never changed, more or less the same. It doesn't learn on its own. But AI is a very different beast altogether. Any agreement or disagreement? If you agreement, please raise your hand. Okay. And if you don't, yeah. Yeah. So I think that is one thing I like to bring to your attention. Yeah. Okay. And so Jim,
Yeah.
you want, yeah.
Any questions from everyone? I mean, we have been asking you questions. You are shy to give answer, but I think it's easy for you to ask question for us to answer you.
I can ask a
Samuel.
question.
Hi, Samuel.
Yeah, actually, some because I think most of us are like we don't come from technology based kind of degree. Actually, we are a lot of us are from either the social sector or business sector, and a lot of us might not have a lot of knowledge into AI and how to use AI to power the kind of work that we do every day. Personally, I'm in social work, and
Social work,
so I'm wondering how can I leverage on AI, especially for someone who don't really know what AI is or still learning about it. Can someone like me without computer science knowledge leverage on it? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, first of all, that's for sure. I mean, I'm sure you use Google Map when you travel, right? Okay, Samuel, right? You're already using AI. Do you use Google search? Yeah, you do,
Yeah,
right?
I do.
It's actually when it's the arrival of ChatGPT is because the AI technology has become so usable, right? Your grandmother know how to use it. Yeah. So I think just like social media, even grandmother know how to use it in Facebook and TikTok, right? But there are a lot of AI happening behind. But actually it's affecting our brain and affecting our decision and our belief, right? So in the sense that just like watching news on social media, first thing is that using it for sure because you're already using it. Of course, you can use it in more advanced like generative AI to generate more letter writing, a document or whatever it is, right? That will make you more efficient. But I think the first priority is for you to understand some that it exists. Number one, it's affecting you. If you're not aware, then you could get yourself into trouble, right? And also if you're aware, then you know what are the things you need to watch out for. Just like, remember they talk about phishing, right? Cybersecurity. If I say when you get an email that asks you to click on something, right? If you do not have this knowledge, you're going to get yourself into big trouble, right? That's an example. I give you another example. I'm just curious. How many of you drive using Google Map? Please raise your hand. Okay. How many of you will lose confidence if you don't have a Google Map to drive? Exactly. Now you are actually being affected right now. You don't even know. You're losing a capability. You lose confidence. You don't know how to drive, basically. So now you need to be aware. Now, this is using AI the right way, but also the wrong way, right? Using it to solve your problem, but you are not actually developing yourself. So you need to be aware. That level of thinking is required in the new generation of the world that we are in, we have AI right now. And that's why government, we have to put in some regulation to protect. But of course, they're not regulating you from not using Google, right? You'll be complaining, right? Yeah. So these are a lot of fine line about what you should regulate and not regulate. Yeah. But if Google give you the let's say a route that is beneficial commercially to them, so that you buy more thing or whatever it is, then we have to regulate because it's not being fair to the consumer, right? So these are some of the aspects we need to deal with. Yeah. But Samuel, good question. So now about social work, right? Okay, here is the situation. Or maybe I throw an example to you about. I'm sure Samuel, you use ChatGPT, right? Yeah. Do you use it?
I do.
What do you use it for? As an example.
So I mean, for start, I used it to like do drafts for my assignment so that I can understand the kind of frame that I need to take, the direction. After that, I realized that I wasn't really thinking, so I started to use it to sort of allow me to, instead of asking for answers, I asked it to give me some direction, give me some frames that I can have so that I can build my own mind. Yeah.
Yes, I do that also. I think that you're just saying something very important, right? I always give a scenario. Every time you use ChatGPT, you are the producer of the content, right? Using it. Then you are actually producing it to be consumed by somebody, right? Let's say you write something to give it to somebody, right? So you're a producer to the consumer, people consuming it. It depends on your level of expertise, right? If on the subject matter like social work that you are expert in, you ask ChatGPT to give you some direction or some content. I'm sure you have to validate first, right? I'm sure you do that.
Yeah.
Because you are a domain expert, guess what? Your cost of validation is much lower than lots of people because you are a social work expert, right? If I ask you to try to vet for a medical doctor's, you'll be in trouble, right? Because you're not an expert. So if you're an expert on the subject matter and you use AI in the case of ChatGPT to generate things for you and your cost of validation is small, then you should use it to enhance what you're doing or come up with idea to discover new idea that you never thought about. That means there are things that you think you know, there are things that you don't even know you do not know, right? So you use it for discovery. Then because you vet it, when you share the content to an expert or non-expert, you're okay. Oh, the risk is okay. That's why it's a type of governance, or you're actually doing self-regulation, right? You're regulating yourself, basically, right? To use it. But you hold all the responsibility, because if you let's say today you're using ChatGPT to write a doctor's letter and you are not an expert, guess what? You ask ChatGPT to generate, you have no idea is it telling you nonsense, right or wrong, right? Basically. But if your audience is an expert, is a doctor, then you should never ever do that. That was not in your favor. That's not the way you want to use it. If your target audience or the consumer is a doctor, you should not use it. But if your target audience is somebody who is not a doctor, then you are playing game with each other, because it's not a person who are not expert talking to a non-expert, right? So that scenario is something you need to think through. So what I'm just sharing with you is a type of higher level thinking about how you should use the tool in the right context. Right? So you don't use it in all contexts. On certain context, you find it useful to use. And of course, there's a cost of using it, because if you use it when you're not an expert, when you're expert, your cost of validation is low, then it's worth the time, right? Basically, yeah. So that will be an example of what you use it for in the context. And of course, in the social work, you are expert in the domain. I don't know what are the things you do, but there are many basic things that AI tool can help you to do, generating images. I personally don't find generating images that useful, or video, right? I find using ChatGPT quite useful for myself, but I'm always very conscious when I use it. And also, you say something very right. You don't want to become too lazy where you depend on it so much that you're not thinking anymore. Then you will actually suffer in the long run. Yeah. I hope that helps in terms of your answering your question. Yes. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I think I can ask. Yeah.
You are?
I'm Shanwei. Yeah.
I'm trying to see where you are. Shan.
Yeah, we're also trying to see. Oh, on top.
Yes.
Top. Shan Wei.
Yes. Hi.
The one with a nice Singapore
Oh,
background.
wow.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
Shan Wei, ni hao.
Hi. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, right, because you mentioned about how algorithm, sometimes you might not know like what the AI is deciding. So I know that this is the black box of AI decision making lah. So I just wanted to ask because I'm in social work also. So the last assignment that we did was about a case study in Japan. So in Japan, there's this like AI decision making tool to help social workers. But apparently, like one of their algorithms, right, basically let a kid to die. Yeah, because they decided that the algorithm decided that the kid is not in high risk. So because of that, Child Protective Services decided not to go to this child's place to do a checkup. Yeah, so that ended up being a neglected case lah. So I just wanted to ask, is there any progress towards this like black box algorithm, and how do we solve it? Because I think as social workers, we can advocate, but how do we make sure that we are part of this like community where we can, find out like how to say, have this power to make changes to this black box algorithm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah. This is a very, very good question and example. I think this is an excellent question. Number one, I would say one thing is that first of all, you say AI is a black box. It depends on what type of AI. That's one thing I want to clarify. If you're using deep learning, which is a neural network, it's really a black box. It's just a bunch of weight, okay? Like a network. So it's a black box. It cannot, very difficult to figure out how to explainable. If you're using machine learning, it's a formula, then at least you have some way to explain it, except the weightage is being so-called computed, right? Then there's another type of AI called symbolic AI, which is reasoning step by step through logic or something like that. Those you can explain. So it depends what AI is being used in that context you're talking about, and I do not know. Right? Now, second, regardless of whichever one, whether all kind of AI, for example, machine learning and deep learning, these are statistical model, right? For example, you talk about the case where the social worker using this AI and you pick the recommendation of the AI, make the wrong judgment, right? Okay, well, you'll be asking this question like what you asked today. But if a human, without using AI, just using a computer and make a decision, you probably will ask the same question, probably ask in a different way, because you accept that all humans can make mistakes. But you cannot accept an AI making a mistake. It wouldn't be a mistake, just statistically, it decided that it's not good, it's actually not a dangerous case. But I'm sure a lot of social workers doing their best still make mistakes, right? Basically, except we may not be reported. So that is one thing I want to talk about. So in a sense, maybe the AI, whether black box or not, okay, explainable or not, may give you a recommendation, and there will be always situation that make the wrong recommendation. That's why a human AI symbiotic relationship or human in the loop will actually reinforce that. For example, right? The AI may come a recommendation, and if you try to explain why, if you cannot explain why, then the person who look at the decision could try to intercept and say that, hey, maybe I need to look at it. I ask a human to do that. And because the AI may handle 98% of the cases, so that everybody, the expert, are actually free up to look in the cases in a more in-depth manner. So that model will work out better, right? Rather than just everything use AI or everything use human, right? So that combination of things will require a lot of fine-tuning to make sure you understand that. And then the explanation is also another angle, not just the decision and how they work together. I hope you help me to answer the question for you.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, it does.
And that is an excellent question. These are very gray area. There's no right and wrong. I just want to let you know. Because humans always also make mistakes. Yeah. But somehow humanity, we accept human making mistake. Then maybe you have a lawsuit. Then you go through the litigation process to figure out, right? A fair trial, right? Or something like that. Yeah. But AI never had got a fair trial. But I'm not saying that I'm supporting AI. I'm just saying that it's because we don't understand it enough. So there are different contexts of being used. And that's why sometimes standard and regulation, like Professor Jim has mentioned, could become necessary to guide. Let's say there could be a regulation on social work using AI, right? So under what kind of circumstances you should be using it, because those decisions could be life or death. Or for example, pressing the nuclear button, right? Should you press it or don't press it? These are big decisions. Or should you save a person with this kind of drug or that kind of drug? But if it's question about should you eat char kway teow or eating that will be a different decision, right? So it depends on the context of the application as well. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. James. Thanks for sharing. I think that just a follow-up from what Shanwei's question is also, so if like AI is very dependent on a series of knowledge or like knowledge bases, and then it tries to make predictive, it gives predictive answers based on like past experience and stuff like that, right? Then how can we ensure that its reliability? I mean, I'm saying this also because it, like you mentioned, and Prof. Jim also mentioned, AI has been known to us since the early 1900s, right? Okay, not early lah, but like
Depend when you go back
mid-century.
to lah, 70, 80
Yeah,
years, 100 years also can.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then like, and it's always dependent on its knowledge base, which is always growing. Yeah. So then when can AI ever be reliable?
Wow. Actually, let me ask the opposite question. When do you think a person is reliable, right? Always? It's not always, right? Basically. Some people have different personality and different knowledge as well. But because of the amplification effect of AI, so getting it right is important because it will affect a lot of people because it's scale, right? Basically. But not all humans are reliable also. Now, to make it all reliable, of course, depending on what kind of AI, the testing can be done just a traditional QA. If you do a rule-based, knowledge-based system, you can still test it out. But there's no 100% because it's very brittle. There's certain scenario it doesn't cover. You can't even make decision on certain scenario. But if we're talking about neural network, it's really a statistical approximation, basically. That's what the large language model predicting the next word is also approximation. It doesn't get it right all the time. Just like you probably use completion, right? When you type in text completion, most of the time it's not right. In fact, it's quite irritating, basically, right? So that's why they have to do a lot of testing. That's why every time Google release a new Gemini, they're always worried because they cannot control the outcome. So actually, it's a very difficult problem to solve. And that's why while we were building some AI system for computer vision, facial recognition, we can use it in some scenario where we can accept certain thing not working. If you go through the immigration, for example, sometimes the thing doesn't work, right? Then we say, okay, let's go to the manual line. But then if you're building large language model, right? And this thing get more and more complex every day when you learn more with more computing power. And after you tested it today, after the learning, it may become a different system the moment you learn for another day, right? That means the testing cost is very high. So now the just like the case of the social worker, the gentleman, I think Samuel, right? You have to practice some safety yourself when you use it. Depends on what context you're using it. If you rely ChatGPT to give you medical advice, I'll be worried, for example. So you have to do some safeguard yourself. Government to the best when you want to deploy to a certain commercial or government services. But then people are still trying to solve that problem, basically. And of course, in the government, there are different level of problem, and we need the best people to be working on it. And I don't think I give you a satisfactory answer because I really don't have the answer. But yeah, I don't really have all the answer because passing a law doesn't mean that you're safe, right? Because even the person who built it does not know how it's going to behave. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. James. I wanted to follow up with a question of my own. I wanted to get your Rajiv here. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Rajiv.
Yeah, I wanted to get your perspective because AI is constantly evolving and it exceeds human intelligence. So with this constant evolution, governments are always trying to play catch up in terms of the laws and policies that they enforce. So I wanted to get your view on how can we actually mitigate or safeguard against the threats that AI poses when it's constantly evolving and improving, and the governments are always playing catch up.
Wow, Excellent question. So you look at the logo on my book. What do you see? What do you see?
It's a infinity. It's a lot.
It's a it's an infinity because you know why? While humanity we pass on knowledge one generation to another through books and many other way, right? We educate our next generation, right? AI will continue to evolve forever. As soon as hardware, they'll upgrade with power, right? So this thing about AI being digitally organic means it's constantly evolving. We have to constantly govern it, basically, literally. So it's almost like you have to constantly jaga or watch out for nuclear technology explosion, right? Basically. So in fact, that is the reality. The infinity is something we had to accept as a new way of life because it is learning all the time and it could become better, smarter, it may exceed us, or even before you exceed us, it may do something different from what we think. It may think differently. It may not, it may be a different way of thinking. It may have different set of value. That's why we have to constantly work on the governance. Now, if you're talking about governance in terms of law, there is only one way to govern. Law doesn't solve. Law only governs human from doing something. Law doesn't govern AI from doing anything. You know what I'm saying, right? It's different, right? Law only say that I want to make sure Professor Jim, who created AI, is responsible. He makes sure he tests it. But even if he did his best, doesn't mean that you will not misbehave, right? So law is only one mechanism, which is a traditional way of looking at governance for many other things, but it may not be sufficient. And I don't think it's sufficient at all. Plus, at the same time, you mentioned something right. Our government may not have the expertise about AI also, right? And how do you want to regulate it? The lawmakers are lawyers, basically. That's why this become a very complex field and you require multidisciplinary background to do so. And so infinity forever, perpetual governance is necessary. You got one of the key concepts on the book cover. Yeah. And so there are principle-based way of dealing with it. There's also perpetual, it's forever, and many other things. Yeah. If you interpret the cover of the book, then you start to see some of the concept coming up. Yeah. But you asked a very good question. For example, right? Let's say you are a parent. Are you a parent yourself with children? Okay, if you're a parent, once you know you become parent, Professor Jim has children also, right? For example, when you bring out your children at 1 year old, you nurture them. When they become 15, you also nurture them. Then they start to mix up with your friend, teenager, right? Then they start learning, learning all kind of things beyond the parents, right? Then they learn from school. Then we go to work, they learn even more. And you always have to help them to make sure that they're okay because they may go crazy on some area, but they may become better, they may become worse, right? So it's a lifetime things. But of course, by the time they're 21, they become independent. Then you have no control over them. So then AI become autonomous, then they are on their own. Then the question is that what does it become? It may be okay today, but 2 months later, you may have learned something dangerous that we don't even know. Remember the Eric Smith thing? He may have learned something dangerous. We don't even know it has learned something dangerous. And we don't know what it is. And we can't even ask it to tell us because unless you have a way to monitor what it has learned. But the system, like a large language model, is so complex. In fact, if you look at social media system like Facebook, right? The algorithm has become so complex. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg knows what's happening to the Facebook sending what message to who. He may have a certain behavior that is beyond his control. Yeah. But that is an excellent question. In fact, from the governance perspective, if you understand it's self-learning and self-evolving perpetually, our governance is perpetual. So our lawmaker, we need to have a dedicated team of lawmakers. Even with that, they still can't keep up. So that's why I don't buy the cliche of all the governance paper out there, even the European AI Act. I think they still need to happen. It's a good effort, but I think we need something better and higher. Now, if you pay attention to OpenAI co-founder Ila, he just left OpenAI. He started a new company.
Sam Altman.
Yeah, Sam Altman and his co-founder Ila. He's the chief scientist, right? He's the brain behind OpenAI. He left, and he started a new company called Safe Super Intelligence, SSI. Go and check it out. And that is probably one of the most frontier project out there right now to how to create super intelligent, assuming he's really assuming how to create super intelligent, but how to make sure it's safe. Because I don't think it's possible to avoid human from creating super intelligent if it happens. Or another point of saying that even if it doesn't become super intelligent, doesn't mean that it's safe. But if safety is a big issue, become super intelligent. Even it doesn't, it may still not safe. So these are some of the things we need to be working on. Now, I know that some of you are in different profession, you're not in technology, but you have a voice to be concerned and make sure our government and the United Nations together can do something. Yeah.
Very interesting discussion. I think there's a question by don't really pronounce the name. Shai Deepbell. Shadipal, right?
Shall I read it? One second now. I am interested in how collaboration between academia and industry partner influence the stability of AI research. Great question. Well, that is something that I talk about. In your opinion, are there specific type of partnership more effective in sustaining research during challenging time? Okay, if you read my book, when I talk about I talk about the funding model. I'm sure all of you know about business model, right? Business school, right? Business model. Business model will create a good business that has revenue model that can make it profitable. A sustainable business model, right? So I believe that in technology like nuclear or pandemic or biotech technology or bio weapons or AI, you need a different model. This question by Saya Dipar is actually very relevant because some technology, actually, if you look at the climate change technology, it's actually funded by the government at the research level, right? This is public money, and their job is to serve the public good. Right? Then at the same time, so that is the public money. Then there's also philanthropy money. Philanthropy, sometimes people want to give back to society out there to make their money. Those money can be used to fund an impact model so that you make sure that whatever your basic research you have done funded by the government, like in Singapore with the NRF, then you take the money and make sure that you invest in no more with philanthropy money to make sure that you test out the impact models. Then there's an impact measurement model. Then when you reach that point where you feel that the impact has positive impact, then you bring in the private money, the VC money or the angel investor money or the private equity money to scale it. That way you make sure that the research is being used and tuned for the so-called the right impact model before you roll out for commercial use. That means you're actually making sure that the AI is used for meeting the public good. Then these are the kind of research funding model we can drive. And right now, if you look at OpenAI, very interestingly, the corporate are actually funding, the private money is funding AI research on top of the university. In fact, they have more money than the government. And that means that we have no control over how they're using it. That's why people are very concerned about the big tech in control of the R&D and therefore driving AI in the commercialization beyond our control, ignoring our safety. And one of the reasons OpenAI was set up by Elon Musk initially was because he felt the danger of Google not paying attention to safety on AI. And that's why he started with $100 million to start OpenAI. And that's why it was started in the first place. And so right now, R&D are being done. I do think that R&D needs to continue. But at the same time, we need to have an intermediate period of making sure that it's the right impact model. That means impact means that it can be has some purpose that achieve public good. At the same time, it's sustainable in terms of a profit model. And that is not an easy thing to do. This is industry has something called the impact investment model. And that is still an area of research and experiment people are trying out. I hope that answered your question, Saya Dipa. But that is actually a very good question. because all basic science like AI, biotech, and etc. needs a lot of investment from the public money, but now the private money are spending a lot on it as well. Professor Jim, are we doing good on time?
Yeah, actually, our time is up.
Wow, that's so
1 hour
fast.
flies very fast, actually.
But I think you all have asked some very, very good question. I'm actually very impressed. Yeah, very impressed.
Okay, maybe before we do the quick closing, any last question? Right, not easy to get the good guest speaker like Dr. James. So any last question that anyone want to ask?
No questions,
Oh,
huh?
okay, good. So very,
Yeah.
very clear. So maybe Dr. James, you want to do your closing remarks?
Yes, I want to close your remark. Well, I have a couple of things to trigger you to think, right? First, normal, go and watch the Eric Smith video. Look for Eric Smith, Stanford. You find him in the video, right? That's one. Second, look at the cover of my book on Amazon and try to understand what does the thing say. Interpret for yourself. And third, if you have a chance, read the book. I'd love to get your feedback as well. And then last but not least, I would say really bring yourself to understand that actually AI governance is not about government regulating only. In fact, to me, that's a very small part of it. It's actually we need to do something together. And that's why I wrote the ASEAN paper on sustainable AI is a collective responsibility, because we live in this neighborhood. And ASEAN is actually a significant enough economic bloc to have that impact, but we need to be in unity, because as a country, Singapore, we are too small. We can lead some of it, but we need Indonesia, we need Malaysia, we need Thailand, we need Philippines and Vietnam, all these countries together. Therefore, we are big enough to have an influence and dance with America, the superpower, with China, with European Union. Therefore, we can together make a world a better place. And there are many things we need to address as part of it. And I appreciate all your time. I hope you all benefit from the conversation today. And of course, thanks to Professor Jim. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. James Ong. Yeah. So where can they buy your book? Online or?
Yeah, go Amazon, search for AI for Humanity, search for James Ong, and you'll find it. Yes.
Yeah. So once you sanitize the slide, send to me, I will send to them. You can see the book.
Yeah. And if you want to, you bought the book, you want me to one day meet out and autograph for you, I'm more than willing to do so. And I want to say one more thing. Just want to clear. If you go and search, there actually very few or no such book that is about AI and humanity crossover, written by an Asian author, basically. So this is something that was written to kind of voice out our perspective. Hopefully that is representative enough, at least an attempt that we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. James. And everyone give a quick round of applause as well. Right. Looking forward to hear more from you next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank you.
a lot.
Talk to you all later. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, thank you, Dr. James, and thank you, everyone. So I hope you enjoy it, right? Our next class 2 weeks later will also have a guest speaker, right? And he was the Chief Data and AI Officer of Health Promotion Board, right? Dr. Tan Hui Ping, right? So you will get to hear from him 2 weeks later as well. Going to be very nice, and that will help you in your number 2 TMA, because it talks about health policy, right? Okay, so this one, I think Dr. James, whatever he's shared will help you a lot in your TMA 01. Okay, hopefully. Okay, so let's quickly go through chapter 4. I don't think we can finish all of chapter 4, right? So I'll cover partially, right? And then in next class, we will cover the remaining as well. Okay, so very quickly, chapter 4, as we start, simple thing as well, just to scan the QR code or go back to the same Mentimeter. I will also scan, go to the Mentimeter, and then we can take a look at the word cloud, right? So scan this QR code, the same link. The question is, what are some of the regulations around AI that you are familiar with? Yeah. So let's take a look at the word cloud. GDPR. GDPR is more data, okay, but it's okay. Ethics, EU AI Act, yes, EU AI Act is one. Sensitive topics, oh no, okay, no racist. Okay. Okay. Anything else? 7 response. Anyone else? What comes to your mind? Anything in Singapore? Regulations that you're familiar with? Okay, this one is generally a tough one, yeah. Privacy protection, reduce biasness, deepfake, transparency, privacy protection, AI art theft regulations. Okay, so now let's go to the next question, then I will tell you about this as well, right? So next question is, okay, oh, you already voted? That's fast. Okay, which country in APAC do you think have the most AI regulations? I also try. Okay. China, Singapore. Anything else? Any more? China. Australia, Japan, Korea. People think India, there's not enough AI regulation. Okay. China and Singapore. Okay, sure. So let's look at the answer. Okay, so first of all, yeah, EU AI is correct. That's in my slide, right? There isn't too many actually, to be honest. And then if we go back to just now, which country has the most AI regulations, right? I think most of you got it correct. Okay, it is actually China. So just a quick snapshot about the AI regulatory framework, right? So just now we saw Singapore as a national AI strategy, right? And then Japan also have Society 5.0. So there's a lot of AI strategy. But in terms of, there are also a lot of AI guidelines, right? Just now say no bias and many other things that you guys put. Those are usually guidelines. Like Singapore has lots of guidelines, right? But in terms of AI law, right, policies, regulations, there isn't much. So you're right, China actually has the most, right? And in fact, other than China, the rest of APAC don't have an AI law yet. So it doesn't say that if you, I mean, we know what law are, right? Or what law is, right? If you violate some of this law, there will be penalty related to that, right? So apart from China, there isn't any other APAC countries that have an AI law, right, enacted, right? But there are lots of countries drafting the AI law itself. Apart from China, you have India, you have Japan, you have Korea, of course, you have Philippines, Taiwan, and Thailand, right? Surprisingly, there isn't in Singapore yet in terms of drafting, as far as we know, yeah? There's a lot of guidelines, of course, in Singapore, and many countries already have a national AI strategy as well, right? So this is a snapshot of where we are in APAC. So good or bad, right? China, just now we talked, is authoritarian political systems. There's social scoring. Somebody just decide that I want to do surveillance monitoring on you, right? But there are also law being enacted to govern that as well. So I think it's a balanced approach. Yeah. So if we look at what are the reference documents, right? Again, you can read about that if you're interested. There are many reference documents. One of the one that I'm familiar with is AI Verify Foundation, because my company is actually part of this as well, that we are helping the government to do the AI Verify, right? So that's one part. Okay. Then if we look at China, right, what are the regulatory policies and others? So these are some of the things started since 2017. They can look at some of these documents from China, right? The one that I'm familiar with and also partially involved is this thing called Agile, right? Artificial intelligence in healthcare guidelines in Singapore. So it was released, I think, 3 years ago, if I remember correctly, right? And it's a working document, right? And it's a guideline, as you can see just now from the table. There are many guidelines, but there isn't a law yet. So in this one, we actually say in what kind of scenario or use cases you can actually implement AI and what are the considerations that you need to see. So you can search for this title, right? It's a MOH paper. It will link you to a MOH website. You can download and you can take a look at that. Yeah. So this is actually one of the things that I'm personally involved in. And yes, there are guidelines on AI, what to use, how to use in different areas. And this is one that's related to healthcare. And again, to help you in your second assignment is something that may be worth for you to have a look, right? There's a lot of publication in MOH website as well about the use of AI. Yeah. Okay. So why do you want to regulate AI, right? So very quickly, I think, again, no surprises to any of you. We have discussed this and you have put a lot in the word cloud that you're familiar with as well, right? So definitely with some kind of regulating AI, hopefully, right? And ideally, we can reduce some of the bias, right? So with some audits, regular audits and testing, we can ensure fairness and equity, okay? And transparency-wise, right, it also helps because we may put in some regulations, right, to ensure and mandate the transparency in AI systems, right? And of course, like we mentioned just now, right, especially in a democratic political systems, it's very important that we have explainable AI models, right, that we can explain. So this morning, I was just talking to Hui Peng, right, the HPB CDO, right? He is saying that today they need advisors and help as well because some of the vendors developing AI algorithms to them is not explainable. So explainable AI is very important, especially in any government agency, in public administration and policy making. You need to be able to explain to your citizen, right? What is your AI trying to do? How are you going to handle? And if anything goes wrong, the accountability of things, right? So transparency is important. And of course, many of you talk about GDPR. We know Singapore is PDPA, right? Although these are data related, right? These are the data protection law, right? That govern the use of data and the data privacy, right? With AI coming in and trying to use some of this data, right? Some of this law or act will actually extend or have a supplementary policy or regulations that's complementing and safeguarding the use of AI that is tapping on this data. Okay. Ethical, right? We always talk about a lot of ethical use of AI, right? So again, this is important to have laws so that we can use that to develop some ethical frameworks and then some clear guidelines on how can we use AI practices to look at human oversight and accountability as well. Okay. International cooperation, right? Again, if like we saw just now, if every countries have their own AI regulations, maturity level, and many other things, right? One of the ways before certain countries reach the same maturity level as others, like let's say for example, let's say Cambodia may not be so advanced in AI, right? We saw in the table, they don't have a national AI strategy yet. So, but we may have impact, right? Just now we saw AI can be a cross-border, cross-country thing. So we may need to have some kind of regulations and framework that can govern and promote international collaboration, right? Okay, so San Francisco is a pioneer in regulating facial recognition technology, right? So when it enacted a ban on government agency using that in 2019, right? That's because of the concerns about privacies, right? Civil liberties and potential for misuse, right? So it was intended to safeguard the civil liberties, but it also have criticism saying that, okay, it can be useful because law enforcement, right? So if you can identify these, starting to collect the data, right? For those of you who may remember, there was a newspaper report, I think many years ago, that a thief or robber, I can't remember, was caught at the Jackie Chong's concert in China, right? Because of the facial recognition technology. So it can really use for law enforcement in preventing crime itself. Yeah. So like we said just now, so if we look at it, how do we encourage trust and innovation and finding a balance to that? So that was one of the questions I asked Dr. James just now as well, right? So of course, we can have risk-based regulation, right? Although we did say that anything that's risk-based approach just now, right? It may be quite labor or capital intensive, right? And there's a lot of focus on the risk, while we may forget a little bit about the use cases and the benefits of that, right? So it's good, but of course, it can be expensive, right? Other thing is that we can create sandboxes, which I think is very commonly used in Singapore. So when I first started telehealth, which is related to AI doctor, right? There is a MOH sandbox called LEAP, LEAP program, LEAP program, that actually is promoting like Doctor Anywhere, White Coat that you are familiar with. They were all started at the sandbox called LEAP, right? Then they start offering their different services. And then what MOH does is that based on the services they offer and based on public feedback and others, they actually tune or write or even write the policy to govern telehealth and AI doctor. So if you notice, there's the most recent news about I think it's called Manadog, right? Manadog, Manadoctor. So their telehealth service was suspended, right? Because there was a collection of data which is mainly in the LEAP sandbox to show that their shortest consultation was only 1 second, if I'm not wrong. Okay. And then most of their consultation is less than 1 minute. And then they give prescription to buy medicine, and they also give MC. So it becomes a question mark, right? Whether you can really diagnose something within 1 second, which is not possible, or can you really diagnose something and ask people to take certain medicine within 1 minute of consultation? So it may be not safe, right? So that's why the sandboxes is a good way to experiment some of this AI technology in a controlled environment, right? And then the insights, the data collected will be used to fine-tune it and ultimately devise a policy or law or regulations for that, yeah? Collaboration, right? So again, the one way to find the balance is developing PPP, public-private partnership, right? So collaboration between government, industry, and academia. I think just now somebody also asked a question, right? And Dr. James already answered, right? How to balance this thing, right? Clear guidelines, right? So again, if we can provide certain very clear and consistent frameworks, right, that will actually give guidelines like what I showed you just now, the agile framework for health, right? It's really something good before someone start and may go wrong, right? This will give them some clear guidelines to start with. And of course, you incentivize responsible AI, right? So a lot of people may just want to roll out AI because see a lot of benefits of it. And many of the benefits usually are not related to ethical use of it. So if you can incentivize responsible AI, right, and promote and prioritize ethical development, then that will be helpful to find a balance between innovation and trust, right? So again, the EU AI Act, which some of you quoted, right, is a good example, right, trying to balance the innovation and the safety itself. Okay. So again, another thing is that what Singapore do quite often, as I told you just now, right, public participation and clear communication, right, which is usually used in the democratic political systems. And Singapore also use many of such approach as well when it comes to new policy making and public feedback, right? So again, not surprisingly, the importance of public participation, right? You actually can enhance legitimacy, right? The credibility and acceptance of the public, right? Sometimes they can offer very good perspective and views, right? And give you some potential risks to address, right? So this is something that is quite useful. Ethical considerations, right? People will talk about the accountability, the biasness, and security considerations and concerns, right? So usually these will come from the public as well. Okay, and of course, some of the public can be very creative, and then it can help the public administrator to think out of the box and something that they may have blind spots about. Yeah, so there's good way of having a public participation when it comes to regulating AI. The need for clear and concise communication, right? So definitely it helps in building trust, right? In promoting understanding, encouraging feedback, and preventing misinformation. Okay, so what's the importance of transparency, right? Again, I'm sure you are very familiar with that, right? Transparency in the regulations, not just AI related, right? It's always good in building public trust, right? It promotes the collaboration, especially PPP, public-private partnership, right? And then it supports innovation, right? Because it helps them to think, okay, I'm quite confident in launching some AI application because it's very transparent. I know what the guidelines I can do according to guidelines, and I will be fine, right? So it actually having the transparency supports innovation as well. And of course, last but not least, it ensures the accountability of things because it actually ensure that whatever you're trying to do, you're responsible and accountable for that, right? And then people are more likely to be able and to accept the usage of it. Yeah, so you drive up the adoption as well. So one thing is important is that transparency in regulation is good, right? But we need to make sure the regulations are understandable, right? One way to do that is, of course, plain languages. Some of the people are visual, so visual aids helps, right? We may digest information faster by looking at infographics or diagrams than just long paragraph or wordings, right? I think what we always aim to do when we give lecture is, apart from telling you the theoretical part of things, which you may or may not digest it easily, one way is to give you example. That's why in the previous chapter, we have gave so much example. And I think Dr. James in his fireside chat also gave lots of examples. So I think there's something that's useful, right? And of course, public consultation and education will help to make regulations more understandable as well. Okay. So what are the key areas of regulation? So I'll just cover this part and then we'll stop for the night, right? The challenges, we'll discuss it in the next class itself, yeah? So key areas for AI regulations, right? So we can identify priorities where to focus regulatory, right, efforts. So of course, we focus on the potential harms, right? What's the probability of occurrence? Like in an autonomous vehicle, how likely that it's going to knock into someone, right? And then severity of it, is it going to kill somebody, right? Societal impact, right? Is it equity and fairness? What's the economic impact? And so on and so forth. What's the civil liberties as well, right? Technology maturity, right? Public perception, the trust and acceptance of that, and then the global landscape. So if we look at some of the example of the key areas and sectors, right? The one that I'm very familiar with is healthcare, right? There is a lot of consideration of using AI to do diagnosis, right? So for those of you who may be familiar with some of these words, if not, feel free to ask me, is that when you go to a doctor, it's usually they do a lot of tests and then they will diagnose you, right? So there's AI diagnosis. So there's a lot of talks saying that I may not have enough doctor to go about. Can AI help me in my diagnostic? The answer is currently no, especially in Singapore. But many countries are promoting what we call AI triaging or AI-assisted diagnostic. So ultimately, the accountability still lies with the doctors, right? But AI can help the doctor to identify pattern, to do preliminary question. It's like you go to a hospital or clinic, sometime before you talk to the doctor, you talk to the nurse first, right? So can AI work like a nurse or senior nurse to get preliminary information before you see the doctor? So triaging is very common overseas, not yet in Singapore, right? But in China, in Indonesia, that I launched the services, is possible already. Drug discovery. If you do not already know, how can we get a COVID vaccination so fast? There's a lot of AI use in that, right? Vaccination, drug discovery, right? So this is definitely a lot of people. And in fact, my company now is helping a lot of pharmaceutical company to do AI drug discovery. But again, accountability is still lying with the pharmacies or the pharmaceutical company and not the AI company, yeah? Personalized medicine is the future trend that we are trying to see that, okay, after I collect all this data, I use AI to analyze the different persona, I can give you personalized medicine, which is supposed to be the future of healthcare that we are all looking forward to. Yeah. Transportation industry is another one that has a lot of AI use. One of them is autonomous vehicle, right? So you don't see much in Singapore. It's in a controlled environment still in Buona Vista, in Sentosa. But in China, there are some cities there's already autonomous bus running quite a lot, right? So that's definitely one of the key use, and you need to have regulatory policies, law that actually enforce the use of it. Traffic management, right? There's a lot of traffic lights that are controlled by AI today, not in Singapore also, but in many other countries. So again, if something goes wrong, right, you show two red light and then two cars knock into each other, who is responsible and accountable? What's the law for that? So this needs to be very clear as well. Okay, justice systems, predictive policing, right, mass surveillance, risk assessment tool. This is another area where we are looking at using AI, and then you need regulatory policy to govern that as well. Finance industry, we all know there's a lot of robo-advisor out there, right? Algorithmic trading, credit scoring. How do we actually regulate that use of that? So if a robo-advisor lose your entire money, who is responsible? Of course, today all the fine print say that you are responsible for it, right? And then like I'm using robo-advisor as well. So every time they ask me to rebalance, then if you accept their suggestion, you are totally responsible. So they are also smart in that, yeah. Education. So again, if you do not already know, your assignment submission will be all tested by Turnitin, which is an AI tool to see how likely that you use AI to help you in completing your assignment. So please don't try that. There's a lot of false positive, what we call that, of course, right? Even my lecture notes went through Turnitin, right? Then they will say, oh, how likely this lecture note is generated by AI. But of course, we pass the test before we can teach, right? So there's a lot of this. And of course, the AI software like Turnitin is not 100% foolproof or clever enough to detect. Sometimes there's a pattern that they recognize, right? So there's a lot of things that's also improving, yeah? So what are the example of applying these factors for AI regulations, right? So you look at potential harm that we talked about already, right? The severity of the consequences, right? The probability of the occurrence in, let's say, an autonomous vehicle, right? The social impact, right? And then it touches the economic impact because it may create job loss, right? In transportation industry, if we launch a lot of autonomous vehicle, right? Technology maturity, right? Full autonomy in driving, is it already workable or is still a challenge, right? What is a safe operation in diverse environment? Public perception, right? Do they trust that there will be no accidents and people are accountable for that? Right? Global landscape, how do we ensure that there's a harmonized standard? So this is using an autonomous vehicle, which is an AI transportation application, right, to actually look at the different areas that we need to consider before regulating it as well. Okay. So innovation versus risk management, right? We need to, like what we say, we need to maintain a sustainable path towards that, right? So can regulation keep pace with innovation? Because we always have a lot of new things. Gen AI came out from, I would say, nowhere to some extent in the past 2 years, right? That totally drive the entire adoption of AI, right? So the challenge is how do we keep pace with technology? I set the regulations today, right? And we know in democratic political system or even republic political systems, set a new law, regulations need to go through layers of approval, right? So before we reach an approval and implement a law, is it already relevant or become irrelevant because you cannot pace with the technology? Yeah. And of course, global coordination is important, right? Because again, we say AI is cross-border, cross-country, right? Of course, we don't want to have restrictive regulations or law that can hinder the development of beneficial AI application. So there's a lot of things to consider, right? We need to strike a balance. Same thing again, risk-based approach, sandbox, performance-based standards, collaborative governance, and ethical guidelines, right? So, but again, it's not easy. That's why you can see, apart from China, almost no APEC countries already have a law enacted. There's a lot of drafting, but will the drafting be still relevant tomorrow? That's way to be seen. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest thing is who is accountable, right? Every time we talk about AI, autonomous vehicle, AI triaging, diagnostic, right? All these things. Who is responsible? Who is accountable, right? Many people say it should be the AI owner, which usually is the IT company. But IT company cannot be responsible, right? So ultimately, who is responsible? So I don't think there's a one size fits all question, but there are many parties, right? Whenever a AI application is launched and used, right, from an AI developer, the manufacturer, it can be hardware, it can be software, right? The owner, the operator, the data provider, or the AI itself, right? And all this, we'll need to really look at it carefully before we can put a accountability, responsible for that as well. Okay. Of course, there's a lot of potential legal frameworks that we'll look at, right? I think the most common one is talking about the liability that the ecosystem player in the AI development ecosystem needs to be responsible, right? One of the key things is about negligence, right? So if I've done all my testing, all my peer review, then okay, should be good. But if I miss out some of this good testing, which is a form of negligence, then there will be responsible party as well. Okay. Of course, we talk about product liability, right? The people who manufacture defective products needs to be liable as well, right? We can have insurance mandates, right? They need to buy insurance. So tomorrow there may be a insurance of AI use or insurance hospitalization insurance when it comes to AI, right? So today there's already certain consideration in insurance. They will cover some of these AI applications, right? But again, it's still at the premature or growing stage for now. Okay. So we can build existing frameworks learning from past efforts, right? So these are the thing is that we can consider what are the existing frameworks we have, like data privacy framework, GDPR and PDPA. Like I mentioned just now, there's a lot of complementary or supplementary laws and regulations that's complementing them, right? Consumer protection is another example, and product liability, which many of the defective products acts are already happening. Yeah. Okay, so I will not go through GDPR in detail. You can read about that, but I think many of you are quite familiar with GDPR, right? So the fine is big as compared to PDPA. You can do a comparison because when we do international business, we always feel that GDPR is more restrictive and more severe, right? And more constrained. But again, it may be good for the citizen, but it may, right, hinder or slow down some of the AI development and adoption. Okay. So I'll stop here as I mentioned, right? I will keep challenges, this last part for the next lecture. Any question till now? Whatever we have covered so far, including Dr. James' supplementary notes today, should help you to complete your first assignment and submit by the 4th of September, which is next Wednesday. Right? Any questions, any concerns, any help needed for your first assignment? No, all good? Okay, if not, I think we started a bit late. We're 6 minutes past, right? So thank you very much for joining tonight. Okay, I will see you guys 2 weeks later. We'll complete chapter 4 plus chapter 5 and 6. And then we have a guest speaker, the ex-chief data officer of HPB. Again, very knowledgeable guy. He can tell you a lot of things what the Health Promotion Board has used use AI and data, and what policy actually use that as well. So looking forward to meet you guys again 2 weeks from now. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prof, a quick question. I can just send you email regarding any queries or stuff for the assignment.
You can send to my SUSS email. But next week I'm actually on vacation, so I may be a bit slow in responding. Right, I'm going to Vietnam from Sunday morning. Right, maybe a bit slow on that. Yeah, so do pardon with me on that.
No worries, but thanks for the heads up.
No worries.
Thank you. See you on the next lecture.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks. Bye bye.